Hey guys, tonight we're diving into the wild, shimmering chaos of the Greek gods, where the universe itself feels like a cosmic soap opera you can't stop watching. Picture this. You're floating in a void. No stars. No time. Just an endless swirl of darkness that hums with potential. It's thrilling. But let's be real. You probably won't survive this if you try to meddle with the deities we're about to meet. Their drama's been sparking wars and myths for millennia, and you're about to get a front row seat. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment with your city and local time. I'm curious where you're all chilling tonight. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're hovering in nothingness, and it's not empty. It's alive, buzzing with something ancient and restless. This is where it all begins, the birth of everything according to the Greeks. They called it chaos, not just a mess, but a primal force, a gaping void that's somehow pregnant with possibility. You feel a shiver as the air thickens, and from this swirling murk, the first gods emerge like sparks from a fire you didn't see lit. There's Gaia, the earth herself, solid and warm beneath your feet, now her heartbeat pulsing through the dirt. Then comes Tartarus, a bottomless pit so deep you'd fall forever if you slipped. Uranus, the sky, stretches above his starry dome, glittering with smug confidence. And Erebus, the shadowy darkness, wraps around you like a cloak you didn't ask for. These aren't gods with temples or statues. They're raw elemental and frankly terrifying. You're not praying to chaos at a cozy altar. You're just hoping it doesn't notice you. Historians point to Hesiod's Theogony, written around 700 BCE, as the mainstream source for this creation story, where chaos birthed the cosmos without so much as a coffee break. But here's a quirky tidbit. Some ancient poets claimed chaos wasn't alone, that a cosmic egg floated in the void, cracking open to spill out the first gods. An egg, seriously. Imagine the cleanup. Historians still argue whether this egg story was a later Orphic cult invention or a rival myth from the start. You watch Gaia stretch her mountains rising like sleepy yawns. She's not just dirt. She's a mother fierce and fertile, ready to populate this empty world. But she's lonely, and Uranus, that starry sky, becomes her partner. You'd think it's romantic, but it's more like a business merger with a side of cosmic awkwardness. They start having kids, and not cute ones. First come the 100-handed ones, giants with 50 heads each, which, let's be honest, sounds like a nightmare at family reunions. Then the Cyclops' one-eyed brutes forging thunderbolts in their smoky caves. You hear their hammers clanging, feel the ground shake as they work. These aren't myths to soothe you. They're stories to make you check under the bed. Gaia's proud, but Uranus, he's a jerk. He hates his kids, thinks they're ugly, and shoves them back inside Gaia, literally trapping them in her womb, which is the earth itself. You wince, imagining her pain, the weight of those giants crushing her from within. She's furious, and you can't blame her. The air grows heavy electric as she plots. You're not just watching a family fight. This is the first divine rebellion, the kind that'll echo through every myth you'll ever hear. Gaia's scheming, and you're caught in the tension, wondering who'll draw first blood. Now let's pause for a chuckle. Uranus, the sky, is basically the worst dad ever, and if he had a Yelp review, it'd be 1 star for keeps kids in mom's basement, literally. But it's not all laughs. Gaia's next move is brutal, and you're about to see why the Greeks didn't mess around with their gods. She crafts a sickle sharp enough to cut through starlight, and whispers to her kids, "Who's brave enough to take down your dad?" The Titans, her next batch of children, are listening. They're not as weird as the 100-handed ones, but they're massive, powerful, and seriously ticked off. You feel the ground rumble as they huddle their voices like distant thunder. Cronus, the youngest Titan, steps up. He's ambitious, maybe a little too eager to prove himself, and you can't help but admire his guts. Gaia hands him the sickle, and you're holding your breath, knowing this isn't going to be pretty. The plan's simple, but gruesome Cronus will ambush Uranus when he comes to Gaia at night. You're there hidden in the shadows as Uranus descends all starry and smug. Cronus leaps, sickle flashing, and well, let's just say, Uranus loses more than his pride. You flinch, the air sharp with the tang of divine blood, and Uranus howls, retreating to the sky forever. Scholars debate whether this castration myth symbolizes the separation of earth and sky, or just a really bad family therapy session. Cronus stands tall, sickle dripping, and you realize he's not just a rebel, he's the new king. Gaia's free, her trapped kids released, but the victory feels uneasy. You notice Cronus eyeing his siblings, already paranoid. He's not exactly hero material, and you're starting to see a pattern these gods don't do happily ever after. The 100-handed ones and Cyclopes are grateful, but Cronus, maybe taking a page from Dad, locks them up again. You roll your eyes, same drama, new management. The air's still charged, and you know this is just the start. The universe is young, and it's already a mess. You're left floating, Gaia's warmth fading as the Titans take center stage. Cronus rules, but you can feel the cracks forming. His siblings, like Rhea and Oceanus, are powerful, and they're not blind to his flaws. You're not sure who to root for. Nobody's exactly cuddly here. The Greeks told these stories to explain why the world's so wild, why storms rage and families fight. You're starting to get it, but you're also wondering how anyone slept after hearing this stuff. For now, you're safe, just a spectator in this cosmic brawl, but the Titans are stirring, and you're about to see what happens when power-hungry gods start picking sides. You're standing on Gaia's freshly formed Earth, the air still sharp, with the aftermath of Cronus's brutal takedown of Uranus. The sky above glitters, but it's distant now, wounded and sulky, leaving you with a front-row seat to the Titans' grand entrance. These aren't the polished Olympians you might picture when you think Greek gods. No togas, no lightning bolts. The Titans are raw, towering, and a little unhinged, like they've just walked out of a cosmic bar fight and are ready for round 2. You're here to watch them seize control, but the ground trembles under your feet, and you can't shake the feeling that their reign's already teetering on chaos. Cronus, sickle still in hand, struts like he owns the universe. He's the new king, and you can see why he's got that dangerous charm, all ambition and no chill. But he's not alone. His siblings, the other Titans, are stepping into the light, each one a force of nature. There's Rhea, his sister and wife. Yeah, the Greeks didn't overthink family trees radiating quiet strength, her eyes hinting at secrets. Oceanus, with his endless rivers coiling around the world, looks like he could drown you with a glance. Tethys, his partner, shimmers with the calm of still waters, but you wouldn't test her. Hyperion, blazing like a second sun, makes you squint, while Theia, his radiant wife, sparkles with a glow that could blind. Then there's Iapetus, grim and shadowy, and his kids Prometheus and Atlas already look like trouble. You're trying to keep track, but it's like a divine reality show with too many contestants. The Titans are 12 in total, 6 brothers and 6 sisters, born from Gaia and Uranus, back when the cosmos was just figuring itself out. They're not just big, they're elemental, tied to the earth, sea, and sky in ways that make your skin prickle. Historians lean on Hesiod's Theogony for this lineup, written around 700 BCE, which lays out the Titans as the second divine generation, bridging the primal void to the Olympians. But here's a quirky tidbit. Some ancient sources like the poet Alcman hint that Themis, the Titaness of divine law, once arm-wrestled her siblings to settle disputes. Arm-wrestling gods. You can't help but smirk imagining the betting pool. The Titans' rise isn't just a power grab, it's a family feud on steroids. You feel the tension as they gather their voices, rumbling like distant storms. Cronus may be king, but he's paranoid, and you notice him gripping that sickle a little too tightly. He's got reason to worry. His parents, Gaia and Uranus, aren't exactly retired. Gaia's still here, her mountains and forests pulsing with life, and she's watching her kids like a mom who knows they'll screw up. Uranus, up in the sky, curses Cronus from afar, his voice a faint howl in the wind. Scholars still argue whether Uranus's curse was a literal prophecy or just a poetic way to explain why Cronus's reign feels doomed from the start. You wander closer, the earth warm under your bare feet, and catch Cronus barking orders. He's trying to organize this chaotic new world, but the Titans aren't exactly team players. Oceanus wants his rivers to run free, Hyperion's obsessed with his solar ego, and Rhea's already side-eyeing Cronus for his control freak vibes. You're starting to see why the Greeks loved these stories. They're messy human, even if the players are gods. Cronus decides to lock up the weirder siblings, the Cyclopes, and hundred-handed ones in Tartarus, that bottomless pit you glimpsed earlier. You shudder, imagining their roars echoing in the dark. It's a power move, but a dumb one, and you're betting it'll bite him later. Let's pause for a chuckle. Cronus, king of the universe, is basically running a divine daycare for his rowdy siblings, and he's already failing. But it's not all laughs. Rhea's pregnant, and you can see the worry in her eyes. Cronus, haunted by Uranus's curse, is obsessed with keeping his throne. The curse said his own child would overthrow him, and you can feel the clock ticking. Rhea's not just a wife, she's a titaness, and you're rooting for her to outsmart him. She's weaving plans, her hands brushing the earth, as if asking Gaia for backup. You're caught in the drama, wondering how long this family can hold it together. The Titans start shaping the world, and it's breathtaking. Oceanus carves rivers that snake across the land, their waters glinting under Hyperion's light. Theia scatters gems in the earth, and you spot emeralds winking in the dirt. Themis lays down laws, her voice calm but firm, keeping the others from outright brawling. You're impressed, but it's not all harmony. Iapetus is stirring trouble, whispering to his sons about power and rebellion. Prometheus, with his sly grin, is already thinking too much, and you're pretty sure he's not loyal to Cronus. Atlas, all muscle, looks ready to carry the world if he has to. The air's thick with ambition, and you're just a speck in their shadow, hoping nobody notices you. Cronus, meanwhile, is doubling down. He's not just king, he's a tyrant, and you can see the Titans chafing under his rule. Rhea's pregnancies become a battlefield. Each time she gives birth, Cronus snatches the baby and, brace yourself, swallows it whole. You gag, the air turning sour as Rhea's screams echo. She's birthed Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, and Poseidon. and they're all trapped in Cronus's stomach, alive, but imprisoned. It's horrifying, but the Greeks saw it as a metaphor for time, devouring everything Cronus linked to time. Can't let the future grow. You're starting to get why these myths stuck around. They're dark, but painfully real. You slip closer to Rhea, her grief heavy as she kneels by a river. She's plotting again, and you're cheering her on even if it's risky. Gaia's whispering to her, the earth itself conspiring. You catch a glimpse of a cave, a secret plan forming, and you know the next kid Zeus might change everything. For now, the Titans rule their power, reshaping the world, but it's fragile. You're walking a tightrope, caught in their drama, and the ground's still shaking. Cronus thinks he's untouchable, but you've seen Rhea's eyes, and you're betting on her. Here's another light jab. Cronus's parenting style makes Uranus look like Dad of the Year, which is saying something. The Titans' reign is epic, but it's crumbling under their own weight. You're starting to understand. The Greek worldview, power's fleeting families messy, and even gods can't escape their flaws. As you linger, the stars above seem to pulse Hyperion's light, fading as night creeps in. The Titans are glorious, but they're not eternal. You're ready to see what happens when their kids, especially one hidden in a cave, decide it's their turn. You're crouched in the shadows of a rugged Cretan cave, the air damp and heavy with the scent of earth and rebellion. The Titans still loom large out there, Cronus strutting as king, but you're about to witness the spark that'll burn their reign to ash. Zeus, the baby hidden from his cannibal dad, is growing up fast, and you're here for his power. Grab a coup that'll rewrite the cosmos. The cave walls pulse with Gaia's warmth, and you can feel the stakes. This isn't just a family spat. It's a war brewing, and you're way too close to the action. Rhea, Zeus's mother, is your hero right now. You remember her grief, those gut-wrenching screams, as Cronus swallowed her other kids, Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, Poseidon. She outsmarted him this time, slipping a rock wrapped in blankets to Cronus, who gulped it down without a second thought. You stifle a laugh. Imagine the guy who rules the universe falling for a fake baby trick. Rhea smuggled Zeus to this cave, handing him to nymphs and a goat named Amalthea, whose milk keeps him strong. You hear the goat bleating nearby, and it's oddly comforting, like a reminder that even gods start small. Zeus isn't a baby anymore. You see him now, a young god, all muscle and fire, pacing the cave like a caged storm. His eyes crackle with ambition, and you're a little intimidated. He's not just Rhea's kid. He's got Gaia's cunning and Uranus's sky-born power. The nymphs whisper stories to him, tales of Cronus's tyranny and the siblings trapped in his gut. Zeus listens, fists clenched, and you can tell he's not here to negotiate. He's planning a revolution, and you're swept up in the thrill, even if it's terrifying. Historians peg this myth to Hesiod's Theogony around 700 BCE, where Zeus's rebellion marks the shift from Titan to Olympian rule, a mainstream fact that anchors the Greek worldview. But here's a quirky tidbit. Some ancient sources, like the poet Pindar, claim Zeus was raised by a magical she-goat whose horns sprayed nectar and ambrosia. A cosmic juice box, you smirk, picturing Zeus chugging divine smoothies. Scholars still argue whether this nectar detail was poetic flair or a nod to older, weirder myths about divine nourishment. Either way, Zeus is ready, and you're watching him sharpen his resolve like a blade. Rhea visits in secret, her face a mix of pride and fear. She slips Zeus a potion, a nasty mix of mustard and wine, and tells him the plan. get Cronus to drink it. You wince, knowing this is no frat party prank. Cronus will puke up his siblings, and all hell will break loose. Zeus nods, his jaw set, and you're impressed by his nerve. He slips out of the cave, the night air electric, as he heads for Cronus's stronghold. You follow heart-pounding, dodging Titan sentries who loom like mountains. The world feels fragile, like it's holding its breath. Cronus's palace is a gaudy sprawl of gold and starlight, and you're sneaking in behind Zeus, trying not to trip over your own awe. Cronus lounges on a throne sickle propped nearby, looking smug but uneasy. You notice his eyes darting like he senses trouble. Zeus, bold as ever, poses as a cupbearer, smooth move, and offers the spiked drink. Cronus downs it, and you brace yourself. The effect is instant. He doubles over, retching, and out come the gods: Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, Poseidon, fully grown and seriously pissed. You're dodging divine vomit, but you can't help grinning as the siblings reunite, their power crackling like a storm front. Here's a quick chuckle. Cronus, king of the Titans, just got played by a glorified bartender, and his face is priceless. But the mood shifts fast. The siblings rally around Zeus, and you're caught in their aura, a mix of rage and hope. Poseidon's fists glow with ocean-deep energy. Hera's glare could melt stone, and Hades' presence makes your skin crawl. They're not just free, they're ready to fight. Cronus roars, calling his Titan allies, and you realize this is war, the Titanomachy, a 10-year brawl that'll shake the cosmos. Zeus leads his siblings to a war camp, and you're trailing them the ground, quaking as Titans mobilize. He's not dumb. He knows they need more than sibling solidarity. Gaia, ever the schemer, nudges Zeus toward Tartarus, where Cronus locked up the Cyclopes and 100-handed ones. You're nervous about this plan. Those monsters are wild cards. The descent to Tartarus is grim, the air thick with despair, and you're clinging to Zeus's shadow as he faces the Cyclopes. They're massive, one-eyed, and surly, but Zeus offers freedom in exchange for weapons. They agree, forging lightning bolts that hum with raw power. You feel the heat as Zeus grips one, his grin fierce. The 100-handed ones are next, and you're not ready. These giants with 50 heads and 100 arms each look like nightmares stitched together. They're furious at Cronus, and Zeus's promise of revenge seals the deal. You're starting to see why he's the boss. His charm and nerve are magnetic. Back on the battlefield, the war erupts. You're ducking as Titans hurl mountains. Cyclopes unleash lightning, and 100-handed ones throw barrages of boulders. The sky burns, the earth splits, and you're just trying to stay alive. Poseidon's earthquakes make your teeth rattle, while Hera's strategies keep the Titans off balance. Let's pause for another jab. Cronus probably regrets skipping that How to Be a Good Dad seminar because his kids are wrecking his vibe. The Titanomachy isn't just a fight, it's a cosmic reset. Zeus's lightning bolts are game changers, scorching Titans like Iapetus and Hyperion. The 100-handed ones are relentless, their 100 arms a blur of destruction. You're awestruck, but it's not all glory. The war drags on, years of stalemate, and you feel the exhaustion in Zeus's eyes. He's young, untested, but he's learning fast. The final battle is chaos. You're there as Zeus unleashes a lightning storm that blinds you, the air screaming with power. The Titans falter, and the 100-handed ones bury them under a hail of rocks. Cronus, defiant to the end, swings his sickle, but Zeus's bolt sends him crashing. The Titans are bound and hurled into Tartarus, their roars fading as the pit swallows them. You're breathless, the world remade in Zeus's image. He's king now, and you're wondering what kind of ruler. He'll be hero or tyrant. You linger on the battlefield, smoke curling around shattered peaks. Zeus and his siblings stand tall, but you notice cracks. Hera's already eyeing Zeus's ego, and Hades looks restless. The Greeks told this story to explain power shifts, how order rises from chaos, but you're starting to see the cost. Zeus owes Gaia the Cyclopes and his siblings, and you're betting those debts will haunt him. For now, the cosmos is his, and you're just a speck in his shadow, watching a new era dawn. One last smirk. Zeus's first act as king is probably demanding a bigger throne, because humility's not his thing. You're exhausted, but hooked to the air, still buzzing with victory. The Olympians are rising, and you're ready to follow them to their new home. For now, you catch your breath, the stars above brighter in Zeus's sky, and you wonder what's next for this divine dysfunctional family. You're catching your breath after the Titanomachy's earth-shaking finale, the air still crackling with Zeus's victory. The Titans are gone, chained in Tartarus, and you're now trekking up a misty peak that feels like the roof of the world Mount Olympus. This is where the new gods, the Olympians, are setting up shop, and you're about to meet the crew that'll rule the cosmos. The climb is steep, the wind sharp with pine and divine ego, but the view's worth it. A golden palace glitters at the summit, all marble and starlight, like a divine penthouse. You're here to settle in, but don't get too cozy. These gods are as messy as their parents, and you're about to see their new world take shape. The palace gates swing open, and you step into a courtyard buzzing with energy. Zeus is at the center, lightning bolt in hand, grinning like he invented winning. His siblings and allies surround him, each radiating power that makes your skin tingle. There's Poseidon's sea salt hair and a trident that hums with ocean rage. Hera, regal but sharp-eyed, already sizing up Zeus's moves. Hades, dark and quiet, like he's half in the underworld already. Demeter, warm but distant, her hands trailing wheat. And Hestia, serene, tending a hearth that glows with unnatural calm. These are the Olympians, the new divine A-team. And you're starstruck, but wary. They're not exactly a unified front. Zeus calls a meeting, and you slip into the crowd, trying not to gawk at the throne room. It's massive, with columns that seem to hold up the sky, and thrones carved from clouds and gems. Zeus's seat is the biggest, obviously, and you roll your eyes at his not-so-subtle flex. He's divvying up the cosmos like it's a family business. Poseidon gets the seas, Hades the underworld, and Zeus claims the heavens. The others, Hera, Demeter, Hestia don't get domains, and you notice Hera's jaw tighten. She's his wife now, and sister, because Greek gods don't do normal, but you're betting she's not thrilled about playing second fiddle. Historians note this cosmic split in Hesiod's Theogony around 700 BCE as the formal start of Olympian rule, a mainstream fact tying the gods to the world's order. But here's a quirky tidbit. Some ancient poets, like those in the Homeric hymns, say Hestia gave up her throne to avoid drama, choosing the hearth over power. A goddess who'd rather Netflix and chill than fight titans. You respect the hustle. Scholars still argue whether Hestia's low-key vibe was a later addition or a core part of her myth, maybe reflecting Greek reverence for home. Either way, you're warming to her as she stokes the fire, the room softening in its glow. You wander the palace, marveling at its details, walls etched with star maps, floors that shimmer like liquid gold. The Olympians are settling in, but it's not all divine harmony. Poseidon's already griping about his ocean domain, saying it's bigger than Zeus's sky. You smirk. Sibling rivalry doesn't die even among gods. Hades slips away early, his cloak trailing shadows, and you're curious about his underworld gig, but not brave enough to follow. Demeter's planting a garden, her fingers coaxing vines from stone. But her eyes are distant, like she's missing something. Hera, meanwhile, is everywhere, her peacock feather fan snapping as she quizzes Zeus's every move. You're starting to see the cracks in this divine startup. Zeus, for all his swagger, is a hands-on boss. He's sketching out rules for the cosmos, setting seasons, storms, and fates. You watch him summon the Moirai, the Fates, 3 eerie women who spin life's threads. Their presence makes you shiver. They're not Olympians, but even Zeus respects them. He's also negotiating with the Cyclopes, who've set up a forge nearby, hammering out new lightning bolts. You feel the heat from their fires, the clang of metal echoing like a divine construction site. The 100-handed ones are gone back to Tartarus as guards, and you're relieved those 50-headed giants were a bit much. Let's pause for a chuckle. Zeus's palace looks like a divine IKEA, but nobody's reading the instructions, and Hera's already rearranging the furniture. The mood shifts as you notice the world below Olympus changing. Mortals are appearing tiny specks, farming and fishing, and the gods are watching them like reality TV. Zeus seems fascinated, but you catch Hera muttering about those ants causing trouble. Demeter's more nurturing her harvests, feeding the new humans, but you're starting to wonder how long the gods will stay hands-off. The Olympians are powerful, but they're not above meddling, and you're betting that'll spark drama. You slip outside the mountain air, cool as you gaze at the mortal world. The gods' influence is everywhere. Poseidon's waves crash harder. Demeter's fields bloom brighter. But there's tension up here. Hera's not just Zeus's wife. She's queen, and you see her testing her power, commanding clouds to shift just to prove she can. Poseidon's trident sparks when he argues with Zeus, and you're dodging stray waves that splash the palace. Hades' absence feels heavy like a storm cloud nobody mentions. Hestia's the only one keeping things calm. Her hearth a steady anchor, but you're not sure it's enough. Here's another light jab. Zeus thinks he's running a tight ship, but his siblings are already planning mutinies over the divine Wi-Fi password. You're starting to get the Greek vibe. The gods are eternal, but they're human at heart, with egos and grudges to match. The palace hums with potential, but you're picking up whispers of trouble. Zeus's wandering eye is already a problem. Hera's fan snaps louder when he mentions nymphs. You remember the Titan's fall, how Cronus's paranoia undid him, and you're wondering if Zeus is headed the same way. For now he's king, and Olympus is his stage. You linger by a balcony, the stars close enough to touch. The Olympians are carving out their roles, but you're seeing their flaws. Poseidon's temper, Hera's jealousy, Demeter's quiet grief. They're not perfect, and that's what makes them gripping. Mortals below are starting to build altars, offering smoke and wine to these new gods, and you're curious how that'll play out. The Greeks told these stories to explain why life's messy, why power shifts and families feud. You're hooked, but you're also glad you're just a spectator, not a mortal caught in their gaze. One last smirk. Olympus is less divine utopia and more reality show with lightning, and Zeus is loving the spotlight. The palace feels alive, its walls echoing with laughter and arguments. You're settling into this new era, but you're keeping an eye on Hera. She's not one to share power quietly. The Olympians are here to stay, but the air's already thick with their next drama. For now, you lean against a column, the hearth's warmth at your back, and watch the gods shape a world that's as wild as they are. You're still basking in the golden glow of Mount Olympus, the air thick with divine ambition and the faint scent of Hera's peacock feathers. The Olympians are settling into their shiny new palace, but you're about to zero in on one goddess who's not here for Zeus's spotlight. Hera, queen of the gods, is a force regal fierce and perpetually annoyed by her husband's wandering eye. You're diving into her world, now navigating her jealous reign, where love, power, and revenge tangle like vines. The marble halls hum with her presence, and you're treading carefully. One wrong step, and you might catch her wrath. Hera's throne sits beside Zeus's, carved with peacocks and clouds, and you can't help but admire her as she lounges there, her crown glinting like a warning. She's not just Zeus's wife and sister. Yep, still weird. She's the goddess of marriage and family, which is ironic given her husband's hobbies. You see her watching Zeus, who's flirting with a nymph across the courtyard, and her eyes narrow to slits. The air crackles, and you're pretty sure that nymph's about to regret existing. Hera's jealousy isn't petty. It's volcanic, born from a mix of love and betrayal, and you're about to see why the Greeks both revered and feared her. You follow her as she strides through Olympus, her gown trailing like a storm cloud. She's not yelling Hera's too classy for that, but her silence is louder than thunder. You recall the Titanomachy, how she fought beside Zeus to topple Cronus, her strategies as sharp as any lightning bolt. Now she's queen, but Zeus's affairs mock her role. He's got a rap sheet of lovers, nymphs, mortals, even other goddesses, and Hera's not the type to shrug it off. You're starting to get why her myths are less about ruling and more about revenge. Historians point to Homer's Iliad around the 8th century BCE, where Hera's portrayed as a fierce queen whose jealousy drives epic plots, a mainstream fact of her divine persona. But here's a quirky tidbit. Some ancient sources, like the scholiasts on Apollonius of Rhodes, claim Hera once turned a rival into a constellation to keep her away from Zeus. A whole star cluster, just to say, back off. That's next level petty, and you're low-key impressed. Scholars still argue whether these stories paint Hera as a villain or a woman reclaiming power in a world that disrespects her. Is she a scorned wife or a goddess enforcing her domain? You're not sure, but you're definitely not crossing her. Hera stops by a balcony, her gaze sweeping the mortal world below. You peek over her shoulder, seeing villages where women pray to her for strong marriages. She's their protector, and you feel a pang of sympathy. She's devoted to her role, even if her own marriage is a cosmic soap opera. But then Zeus laughs with another nymph, and Hera's fan snaps shut. She summons Argus, her 100-eyed watchman, a creepy giant who never sleeps. You shudder as his eyes, literally all over his body, lock onto Zeus's latest fling. Hera's orders are clear. Watch, report, ruin. You're starting to see her pattern. She doesn't just get mad. She gets even. Let's pause for a chuckle. Hera's basically running a divine CIA, and Zeus is the world's worst secret agent getting caught every time. But it's not all laughs. You follow her to a mortal town where a woman, Io, catches her eye. Io's a priestess, innocent but cursed with Zeus's attention. Hera's not blind. She knows Zeus is smitten, and Io's life is about to implode. You watch heart sinking as Hera transforms Io into a cow, her moose echoing with human despair. It's harsh, but Hera's not done. She sends a gadfly to sting Io, endlessly driving her across continents. You're torn. Hera's pain is real, but Io's suffering feels unfair. You slip back to Olympus, the air heavy with Hera's resolve. She's not just targeting mortals. Zeus's divine lovers like Leto and Semele are on her radar too. You hear whispers of Leto pregnant and hunted, unable to find a place to give birth because Hera's cursed the land. Semele's story is worse. Hera tricks her into seeing Zeus's true form, and the mortal burns to ash. You wince, the cruelty sharp, but you're starting to understand Hera's logic. Zeus's affairs threaten her status, and in a world where gods are power, she's fighting to stay relevant. Hera's not all vengeance. You see her softer side in quiet moments, blessing mortal weddings with a wave of her scepter. The couples below glow their vows sealed by her grace, and you're reminded she's more than a jealous wife. She's a goddess who believes in commitment, even if her own is flawed. But Zeus doesn't stop, and you're betting Hera's patience is a ticking bomb. You catch her plotting with Poseidon and Athena, whispering about curbing Zeus's power. It's risky treason, even for a queen, and you're nervous for her. The Olympians are a family, but loyalty's thin when egos clash. Here's another light jab. Hera's marriage counseling would just be turn them into livestock. And honestly, it's a mood. You're starting to see the Greek worldview through her eyes. Power is fragile. Love is a battlefield, and even queens fight dirty. Hera's reign is a balancing act, goddess wife avenger, and you're impressed by her grit. You wander to her temple, a smaller one tucked behind Zeus's, where mortals offer pomegranates and prayers. The air's warm, scented with fruit, and you feel her influence steady but fierce. She's not loved like Aphrodite or feared like Poseidon, but she's essential, holding the divine family together, even as it frays. You linger watching Hera confront Zeus in the throne room. She's calm, her voice like ice calling out his latest fling. Zeus laughs it off, but you see his grip tighten on his bolt. The other gods pretend not to notice, but you're catching the tension. Hera's not just fighting for herself. She's challenging the chaos Zeus brings. You remember the Titans, how Cronus's paranoia doomed him, and you're wondering if Hera's rage will be her downfall or her strength. For now, she's queen, and Olympus bends to her will even if Zeus doesn't. One last smirk. Hera's probably got a divine burn book, and Zeus's name is on every page in bold. You're hooked on her story, the way she navigates power and pain with a flick of her fan. The palace hums with her energy, but you're ready to move on, curious about the other Olympians and their domains. Hera's reign is a storm, and you're just glad you're not in her crosshairs. For now, you slip away, the echo of her voice, lingering as you head toward the next divine drama. You've slipped away from Hera's stormy presence on Olympus, her peacock feathers still rustling in your mind as you dive into a new realm, Poseidon's vast, untamed ocean. The air shifts salty and electric as you find yourself standing on a jagged cliff, waves crashing below like a divine temper tantrum. Poseidon, god of the sea, earthquakes, and horses, rules this domain, and you're about to navigate his watery world, dodging his unpredictable moods. The horizon stretches endless, and you feel small, the ocean's power, a reminder that even Olympians can make you tremble. You leap from the cliff, not falling, but gliding the sea, parting to cradle you. Poseidon's domain is alive, its currents pulsing like veins. You spot him in the distance, astride a chariot pulled by hippocampi half-horse, half-fish beasts that churn the foam. His trident gleams a weapon that can split mountains or calm storms, and his sea-green eyes flicker with pride and impatience. He's Zeus's brother, but there's no brotherly love here. You sense the rivalry sharp as the coral reefs below. Poseidon's not just a god, he's the ocean's heartbeat, and you're caught in its rhythm. You swim deeper, the water, cool but welcoming schools of fish, darting like living jewels. Poseidon's palace looms a coral and pearl marvel that shimmers in the deep. It's not Olympus's polished marble, but it's no less grand, with halls that echo the sea's roar. You slip inside, dodging nereids, sea nymphs who giggle and whisper about their king's latest mood swing. Poseidon's throne is a massive conch shell encrusted with barnacles, and he lounges there, trident propped like a challenge. You're starting to get why the Greeks saw him as both savior and destroyer. One wrong word, and you're fish food. Poseidon's rule is ancient, rooted in the cosmic split you witnessed on Olympus. When Zeus took the sky and Hades the underworld, Poseidon claimed the seas, a domain as vast as his ambition. Historians cite Hesiod's Theogony, around 700 BCE, for this division, a mainstream fact that frames Poseidon as the earthshaker, second only to Zeus in power. But here's a quirky tidbit. Some ancient texts, like the Orphic hymns, say Poseidon once bred magical horses from sea foam, gifting them to mortals. Horses from bubbles. You chuckle, imagining him as a divine horse whisperer with a trident. You follow Poseidon as he patrols his realm, his chariot slicing through currents. He's checking on his subjects, tritons, blowing conch horns, sea monsters dozing in trenches. You're awed by the scale, but his temper's a constant threat. A mortal ship sails above, and Poseidon squints, annoyed by their sloppy offerings. With a flick of his trident, he summons a storm waves, swallowing the vessel. You wince the sailor's screams, faint but haunting. The Greeks told these stories to explain shipwrecks and quakes, and you're seeing why Poseidon's mood swings are lethal. Let's pause for a laugh. Poseidon's basically the guy who'd flood your house because you cut him off in traffic. But it's not all chaos. You notice his softer side when he visits Amphitrite, his queen, a nereid with eyes like calm tides. Their marriage isn't perfect. Poseidon's got his own Zeus-like wandering eye, but Amphitrite soothes him, her voice taming his storms. You're starting to see the balance. He's wild, but not heartless, a god who loves his seas as much as he loves control. Still, you're keeping your distance. That trident looks way too pointy. You dive to a sunken city, its columns cracked but glowing with bioluminescent algae. Poseidon lingers here, his expression almost tender. Whispers say he built this for mortals, who honored him but sank it when they forgot their prayers. Scholars still argue whether these flood myths reflect real ancient disasters, like tsunamis in the Aegean, or just the Greeks' fear of nature's wrath. You're not sure, but the ruins feel alive, as if Poseidon's watching, daring you to disrespect his turf. You swim on the water heavier now, like it's carrying his grudges. Poseidon's not just about seas. You feel the earth tremble an earthquake, his other gift. He's flexing his power, reminding Zeus who controls the ground beneath Olympus. You recall their rivalry, how Poseidon challenged Zeus's rule during the Titanomachy's aftermath. He's loyal now, sort of. But you're betting he'd love a shot at the top spot. His trident's not just a weapon, it's a symbol, and you're dodging its sparks as he carves new islands, each one a jab at Zeus's sky. The ocean's his empire, and he's not sharing. You surface near a coastal village, mortals offering fish and pearls at a Poseidon shrine. They pray for calm seas, but you see fear in their eyes. They know he's fickle. One man, braver than most, begs for a horse, and Poseidon, in a rare good mood, sends a stallion from the waves, its mane dripping foam. You're impressed, but you're also noticing a pattern. Poseidon's gifts come with strings. That horse might win races, but it'll probably drown someone later. The Greeks saw him as a god of extremes, and you're feeling it, his generosity as wild as his wrath. Here's another quick jab. Poseidon's like that uncle who gives you a cool gift, but expects you to worship him forever. You're starting to understand his role in the Greek cosmos. He's chaos and creation, the sea's beauty and terror in one. You swim to a coral reef, vibrant with life, and see his pride in every anemone. But then he argues with Athena over a city Athens you'll learn later, and his temper floods the plains when he loses. You're dodging waves again, wondering how anyone deals with a god this moody. You drift to a quieter part of the sea, where dolphins play their clicks like laughter. Poseidon joins them, his trident set aside, and you catch a glimpse of joy, rare but real. He's not just a storm. He's the tide that lifts ships, the quake that reshapes coasts. You're starting to respect him, even if you're still wary. His rivalry with Zeus lingers a current under the surface, and you're curious how it'll play out. For now, he's king here, and you're just a visitor carried by his waves. You pause by a sea cave, its walls etched with trident marks. Mortals tell stories of Poseidon's loves, nymphs, mortals, even monsters, and you're reminded of Hera's wrath, how she'd hate this. His kids, like the winged horse Pegasus, are legends, but you're sensing trouble brewing. The Olympians are a messy family, and Poseidon's no exception. You recall the Titanomachy, how his earthquakes helped Zeus win, and you're wondering if his loyalty's as shaky as the earth he breaks. One last smirk. Poseidon's ocean is basically a divine water park, but the lifeguards got anger issues. You're hooked on his world, its beauty and danger swirling like a whirlpool. The sea's alive with his power, but you're ready to move on, curious about the next Olympian and their domain. For now, you float the waves gentle, and let Poseidon's rhythm carry you toward the next chapter of this divine saga. You've just surfaced from Poseidon's turbulent ocean, the salt still clinging to your skin as you're whisked into a darker, colder realm, Hades' underworld. The air turns heavy thick with the scent of damp stone and forgotten things, and you're standing at the edge of a vast chasm, the river Styx glinting below like liquid obsidian. This is Hades' kingdom, a place of shadows and secrets, and you're about to creep through it, dodging ghostly traps and the god who rules the dead. Your heart's pounding, but there's no turning back. The underworld's got you now, and Hades is watching. You descend a spiraling path, the walls pulsing with faint moans, and you're already regretting not bringing a flashlight. The Styx coils below, guarded by Charon the ferryman, his skeletal hands gripping an oar. You toss him a coin, good thing you remembered that trick, and he rows you across his silence, creepier than any ghost. On the other side, Cerberus, the three-headed dog, snarls, each head snapping with slobbery fangs. You slip past heart in your throat as his eyes glow like coals. This isn't Olympus's glitz or Poseidon's wild waves. Hades' world is a maze of dread, and you're just a speck in its gloom. Hades' palace looms carved from black rock, its towers sharp as despair. You sneak inside the air colder now and spot him on a throne of onyx, his helm of invisibility glinting beside him. Hades isn't flashy like Zeus, or stormy like Poseidon. He's quiet, intense, his eyes like bottomless wells. He's Zeus's brother, but there's no sibling banter here. He rules alone, save for Persephone, who's absent today. You're relieved she's a whole other story, but you're curious about Hades. The god nobody prays to, but everyone meets eventually. His domain is final, and you're feeling its weight. The underworld's not just a graveyard, it's a bureaucracy of death. You watch Shade's ghostly souls shuffling through judgment, their whispers like dry leaves. Minos, Rhadamanthus, and Iacchus. The judges sort them heroes to Elysium's golden fields, sinners to Tartarus's fiery pits, and most to the asphodel meadows, a gray limbo of boredom. You're glad you're not dead yet, but the process fascinates you. Historians tie this setup to Homer's Odyssey, around the 8th century BCE, where the underworld structure reflects Greek views on death and justice, a mainstream fact of their afterlife lore. But here's a quirky tidbit. Some ancient sources, like the poet Pindar, claim Hades once lent Cerberus to a mortal hero for a dog show of sorts, only to regret it when the beast got too friendly. A three-headed puppy playdate. You smirk, picturing Hades grumbling over paperwork. Scholars still argue whether these lighter Hades stories were meant to humanize him or just soften his grim reputation. Is he a monster or a misunderstood loner? You're not sure, but his stare makes you want to stay on his good side. You creep deeper, dodging the Fury's winged hags who punish oathbreakers with whips and screams. Their eyes lock onto you, and you freeze, but they pass, chasing a shade who stole in life. The underworld's rules are ironclad, and Hades enforces them without mercy. You notice his helm, the one that makes him invisible, and you're tempted to try it on. Imagine sneaking past Cerberus, but you're not that brave. Hades' power isn't flashy like Zeus's bolts or Poseidon's quakes. It's quiet, inevitable like death itself. You're starting to respect him even if he gives you chills. Let's pause for a chuckle. Hades' palace is like a divine DMV, all endless lines and grumpy staff, but with more monsters. The mood shifts as you explore Tartarus, a pit so deep it makes your stomach lurch. The titans are chained here, their groans shaking the walls, and you recall Zeus's victory, how Hades fought beside him in the Titanomachy. He's loyal but distant, and you're betting he resents his underworld gig. Who'd choose this over Olympus's sunlight? Yet he's made it his own ruling with a fairness that surprises you. You wander to the Elysian fields, a rare bright spot where heroes feast under eternal stars. It's peaceful, but you're drawn back to Hades' throne, where he's reviewing souls with a frown. He's not cruel, just tired, and you're starting to see why the Greeks didn't worship him like Zeus. He's necessary, not loved, a god who keeps the cosmos balanced. You catch a glimpse of his loneliness, and it hits harder than Cerberus's growl. His brothers rule sky and sea. He's stuck with shadows, and you're wondering if he ever dreams of leaving. Here's another light jab. Hades probably invented the phrase dead-end job, and his employee handbook is just, don't let the dog eat the guests. You're starting to get the Greek view of death. It's not evil, just final, and Hades is its reluctant steward. You slip past the river Lethe, where souls drink to forget their lives, and you're tempted to sip. Mortal worries sound heavy, but you keep moving. The underworld's a maze, and you're dodging traps like the Erinyes or the Styx's currents, which could trap you forever. You pause by a pool where shades tell stories of the living world. They speak of Hades rarely, but when they do, it's with awe, not fear. He's fair, they say, unlike Zeus's whims or Poseidon's storms. You're surprised he's not the villain you expected. His helm lets him slip into the mortal world unseen, and you wonder what he sees there. Does he envy the living or pity them? The Greeks saw him as death's face, but you're seeing his complexity, a king who doesn't want worship, just order. You're near the exit. Now the Styx's ferry waiting. Charon glares, but you've got another coin, and he rows you back. Cerberus snarls as you pass, but you're bolder now, giving him a wide berth. The underworld's taught you something. Even gods have burdens. You recall Hera's rage, Poseidon's pride, and now Hades' quiet duty. And you're seeing the Olympians as a fractured family, each shaped by their role. Hades' kingdom is grim, but it's honest, and you're carrying that truth as you climb back to the light. One last smirk. Hades' underworld is like a haunted house, where the host is just over it, but the snacks are eternal. You're relieved to leave the air warming as you near the surface, but you're hooked on this divine drama. The Olympians are messy, but they're gripping, and Hades' shadows have only deepened the story. You're ready for the next god, curious about who'll steal the spotlight. For now, you step into the sunlight, the Styx's chill fading, and let the next chapter pull you forward. You've just climbed out of Hades' shadowy underworld, the chill of the Styx still lingering as you're whisked to a brighter stranger scene. You're standing in Zeus's throne room on Olympus, the air crackling with divine energy, but something's off. Zeus is wincing his hands, clutching his head like he's got the world's worst migraine. You're about to witness one of the wildest births in Greek myth, Athena, goddess of wisdom and war, springing fully grown from Zeus's skull. This is her moment, and you're here to marvel at her clever origin, dodging the cosmic weirdness of a god-giving birth. The marble floor vibrates, and you're ready for a show. The throne room is packed. Hera's on her throne, fan snapping with suspicion. Poseidon's leaning on his trident smirking, and other Olympians whisper sensing something big. Zeus groans, his face pale, and you're wondering what he did to deserve this. The story goes back to Metis, a titaness of cunning who Zeus loved and then swallowed. Classic Zeus, moved to keep her wisdom close. You roll your eyes, remembering Cronus's kid-swallowing days. Like father, like son, apparently. But Metis inside Zeus crafted Athena, and now she's ready to break free. You're braced for chaos, the air thick with anticipation. Hephaestus, the smith god, steps forward, his hammer gleaming. Zeus, desperate, begs him to crack his skull open. You wince as Hephaestus swings the hammer, striking with a clang that echoes like a cosmic bell. The room holds its breath, and then boom! Athena bursts out, fully armored, her owl perched on her shoulder, her spear flashing with light. You're blinded for a second, her presence sharp and commanding, like she's already running the show. The Olympians gasp. Hera's fan freezes mid-snap, and you're in awe. This goddess is no ordinary newborn. Athena strides forward, her gray eyes scanning the room with a mix of calm and steel. She's wisdom incarnate, but also a warrior, her shield etched with serpents. You feel smarter just standing near her, but also a little scared. She's not here to mess around. Her birth is a turning point, marking her as Zeus's favorite, and you're catching Hera's glare, which could melt marble. Historians point to Hesiod's Theogony around 700 BCE for this wild birth story, a mainstream fact that cements Athena's unique place among the Olympians as a goddess born without a mother. But here's a quirky tidbit. Some ancient sources, like the poet Stesichorus, claim Athena's owl wasn't just a pet, but a spy whispering mortal secrets to her. A divine gossip owl, you smirk, imagining it eavesdropping on Olympus's drama. Scholars still argue whether Athena's birth symbolizes wisdom triumphing over chaos, or just Zeus's ego needing a literal headache to produce something brilliant. Either way, you're hooked, watching her take her place among the gods, like she's been here forever. You follow Athena as she leaves the throne room, her armor clinking softly. She's headed to her temple, a sleek marble structure on Olympus, already filled with scrolls and weapons. You're impressed. She's not just a fighter. She's a planner. Her mind, a labyrinth of strategies. She sits sketching battle formations on a tablet, and you're starting to see why the Greeks loved her. She's not impulsive like Ares, or vengeful like Hera. She's calculated her wisdom, a weapon sharper than her spear. You're tempted to ask for advice, but her owl stares you down and you rethink it. Let's pause for a chuckle. Zeus, giving birth via skull surgery, is peak Greek weirdness, like a divine C-section gone rogue. The mood shifts as Athena visits the mortal world, her presence calming a city. Athens, her future namesake. Mortals offer olive branches, sensing her favor, and you see her smile rare but warm. She's their patron, guiding weavers, generals, and thinkers. You're starting to get her vibe. She's the goddess you'd want in a crisis, not throwing tantrums like Poseidon, but solving problems with a cool head. You wander back to Olympus, where Athena's already stirring things up. She's advising Zeus on mortal disputes, her voice steady but firm, and you notice him listening. Actually listening, which is rare. Hera is not thrilled, her fan snapping again, and you're betting she sees Athena as a threat. You recall Hera's wrath, how she punishes Zeus's lovers, and you're wondering if Athena's favored status will spark more drama. For now, she's untouchable, her birth a miracle that's got everyone talking. Even Poseidon, usually cocky, gives her a nod of respect. Athena's not all work. You catch her weaving a tapestry, her fingers impossibly fast, creating scenes of victories and cities. It's hypnotic, and you're seeing her softer side creator, not just destroyer. But then she spars with Ares, the war god, in a training yard, and you're back to awe. Her spear dances, outsmarting his brute force, and you're cheering quietly, glad someone can humble him. The Greeks saw her as war's better half strategy over slaughter, and you're feeling it, her precision, a contrast to the chaos you've seen in Poseidon's seas or Hades' shadows. Here's another light jab. Athena's basically the Olympian who'd win at chess and a sword fight in the same day. Then lecture you on why you lost. You're starting to understand her role in the Greek cosmos. She's the bridge between mortal and divine wisdom made flesh. You slip into a mortal city she's visiting, where artisans craft pottery under her guidance. They pray to her, not out of fear, like with Poseidon, but gratitude. She's their muse, and you're seeing why Athens will fight to claim her. You're back on Olympus now, watching Athena debate with Hermes, the trickster god, over a mortal hero's fate. Her arguments are razor sharp, and Hermes, usually glib, struggles to keep up. You're impressed, but you're also noticing the bigger picture. Athena's birth has shifted the Olympian dynamic. Zeus trusts her. Hera resents her, and the others are wary but intrigued. You recall the Titanomachy, how Zeus needed allies to win, and you're betting Athena's his secret weapon. Now her mind a fortress, even Hera can't crack. You linger by her temple, the owl hooting softly. Mortals below build shrines to her offering wisdom over gold, and you're struck by her influence. She's not just a goddess. She's an idea proof that brains can outshine brawn. You're starting to see the Greek worldview through her power needs purpose, or it's just noise. You're hooked, but you're also glad. You're not in Hera's shoes, dealing with this new rival. Athena's here to stay, and you're ready to see who's next in this divine lineup. One last smirk. Athena's skull birth is the ultimate born-ready flex, and Zeus probably regrets not just taking an aspirin. You're caught up in her story, her blend of strength and smarts, a highlight in Olympus's chaos. The air's still buzzing with her arrival, but you're ready to move on, curious about the next god and their world. For now, you step away from her temple, the owl's eyes following you, and let the next chapter pull you forward. You're still buzzing from Athena's dramatic skull birth. On Olympus, her owl's hoot fading as you're swept into a radiant new scene. The sky blazes gold, and you're soaring alongside a chariot pulled by fiery horses, the sun itself blazing at its core. This is Apollo's domain, god of the sun, music and prophecy, and you're riding with him, chasing the sun's path across the heavens. His golden chariot hums with energy, and you're gripping the edge heart, racing as you dodge solar flares and Apollo's dazzling grin. This is his world, and you're here to marvel at its brilliance. The chariot's wheels spark, painting the sky with dawn's pinks and oranges. Apollo stands tall, his lyre slung over his shoulder, a laurel crown glinting in his hair. He's not just a sun god, he's a rock star, all charisma and precision, his golden eyes scanning the world below. You feel the heat, not just from the sun, but from his presence, a mix of warmth and intensity that makes you want to applaud and hide. He's Zeus's son, Athena's half-brother, and you're starting to see the family resemblance, confidence bordering on arrogance, but with talent to back it up. You glance down the mortal world, a patchwork of fields and cities. Apollo's light touches everything, coaxing crops to grow and mortals to sing. He's not just driving the sun. He's inspiring poets, healing the sick, and whispering prophecies to oracles. You're impressed, but his chariot's pace is relentless, the sky blurring as you race from dawn to dusk. He hums a melody, his fingers strumming an invisible lyre, and you're caught in the music, the notes weaving light into sound. Historians tie Apollo's multifaceted role to Homer's Iliad around the 8th century BCE, where he's a god of both creation and destruction, a mainstream fact of his complex myth. But here's a quirky tidbit. Some ancient sources, like the poet Callimachus, claim Apollo once lost a music contest to a satyr named Marsyas, only to flay the guy for bragging, a sore loser with a lyre. You smirk, picturing Apollo's ego taking a hit. Scholars still argue whether this story was meant to show his flaws or just warn mortals not to challenge gods. Either way, you're keeping your compliments ready just in case he's touchy about his skills. You lean closer, the chariot's heat warming your face, and watch Apollo guide the sun with a flick of his reins. He's not alone, his sister Artemis. The moon goddess will take over at night, and you're curious about their twin dynamic. For now, Apollo's in charge, and you're marveling at his control. He points to Delphi, a mortal city nestled in mountains, where his oracle sits, inhaling sacred vapors to spout prophecies. You're tempted to ask for your future, but the line's probably centuries long, and Apollo's not stopping for hitchhikers. Let's pause for a chuckle. Apollo's chariot is like a divine sports car, and he's definitely not letting you touch the wheel. The mood shifts as you notice his other side. He's not just sunshine and songs. He's a god of plague, his arrows spreading disease when mortals cross him. You recall a story from the Iliad, where he rains pestilence on a Greek army for disrespecting his priest. The thought chills you, the sun's warmth suddenly sharp. You're starting to get why the Greeks both loved and feared him. His light can heal or burn, and it's all up to his mood. You swoop lower the chariot, grazing a forest where Apollo's sacred laurel trees grow. He pauses his fingers, brushing a branch, and you catch a flicker of sadness. The story of Daphne, a nymph who turned into a laurel to escape his pursuit, lingers here. You're surprised Apollo, the golden god, rejected it humanizes him, and you're seeing the Greek knack for flawed deities. His laurel crown, you realize, isn't just a trophy. It's a reminder of loss. You're starting to like him, not just for his dazzle, but for the cracks beneath it. Back in the chariot, Apollo's singing now a hymn that makes the stars peek out early. You're mesmerized, the sound weaving visions of battles and loves. He's the god of poetry, and you're tempted to jot down a verse, but the chariot's rocking, and you're just trying not to fall. He points to a mortal festival where musicians play lyres in his honor, and you see his pride, genuine, but edged with expectation. The Greeks offered him hymns and sacrifices, and you're betting he's not above smiting a bad performer. Here's another light jab. Apollo's basically the divine equivalent of a pop star who'd cancel a concert over a lukewarm review. You're starting to understand his role in the Greek cosmos. He's light and truth, but also judgment, a god who demands perfection. You glance at Olympus in the distance, remembering Athena's cool-headed wisdom and Poseidon's wild temper. Apollo's different, passionate, but precise, a balance of heart and mind. You're hooked, but you're also noticing his ego, how it rivals Zeus's, and you're wondering if that'll spark trouble. You're nearing dusk, the sun dipping low, and Apollo's chariot slows. He's preparing to hand off to Artemis, and you catch a glimpse of her silvery glow on the horizon. The twins are close, but you're betting they bicker like any siblings. Apollo's not done yet. He visits a mortal healer, guiding her hands to save a child, and you see his kindness rare but real. He's not just a god, he's a force shaping art, health, and fate. You're starting to see why Delphi's oracle was a big deal. His prophecies guided kings and heroes, even if they were cryptic as a fortune cookie. You pause by a sacred spring, its waters reflecting Apollo's light. Mortals here offer lyres and laurels, praying for inspiration, and you feel his influence warm but demanding. He's not as distant as Hades or as volatile as Poseidon. He's present, his light, touching every mortal life. You recall Hera's wrath, how she punishes Zeus's lovers, and you're glad Apollo's mother Leto survived her jealousy to birth him. His existence feels like a triumph, a middle finger to Hera's schemes. One last smirk. Apollo's chariot ride is the ultimate flex, but he probably checks his hair in every reflective cloud. You're caught up in his world, its music and menace swirling like his hymns. The sky's darkening now, Artemis's moon rising, and you're ready to move on, curious about her hunt and the next Olympian's tale. For now, you linger the sun's last rays fading, and let Apollo's golden glow carry you toward the next chapter of this divine saga. You've just left Apollo's blazing chariot, the sun's warmth still tingling on your skin as the sky darkens and a silver glow takes over. You're now deep in a moonlit forest, the air cool and alive with the rustle of leaves, and the distant howl of wolves. This is Artemis's domain, goddess of the hunt wilderness and the moon, and you're tracking her through these shadowy woods, joining her wild hunt. Her presence is electric, a mix of grace and danger, and you're moving quietly, hoping to keep up without becoming her next target. The trees part, and you're ready to dive into her world. You spot Artemis ahead, her bow drawn, her silver hair catching the moonlight like a beacon. She's flanked by her nymphs, lithe hunters, who move like whispers, and a pack of sleek hounds, their eyes glinting with loyalty. She's Apollo's twin, but where he's all golden swagger, she's cool precision, her gaze sharp enough to pin a deer at 100 paces. You're awestruck. She's not just a goddess. She's the forest's pulse, wild and untamed. You're trying to stay silent, but a twig snaps under your foot and her head turns. You freeze, heart pounding, but she smirks, letting you follow. Whew, the hunt begins, and you're swept along the forest, a blur of moonlight and motion. Artemis tracks a stag, her movements fluid, like she's dancing with the shadows. Her arrow flies, and the stag falls clean and quick. She's not cruel, just efficient. You're impressed, but also a little spooked. She's a protector of animals, yet hunts them, a paradox the Greeks embraced. Her nymphs cheer, offering the kill to her, and you see her nod, solemn but proud. Historians cite the Homeric hymn to Artemis around the 7th century BCE for her role as huntress and wilderness queen, a mainstream fact tying her to nature's raw power. But here's a quirky tidbit. Some ancient sources, like the poet Cronus, claim Artemis once turned a peeping mortal into a stag for spying on her bath, letting her hounds tear him apart. A goddess with a no creeps allowed policy. You grin, respecting her boundaries. Scholars still argue whether these stories highlight her fierce independence or just warn men to steer clear. Is she a feminist icon or a divine enforcer of privacy? You're leaning toward both, but you're definitely not testing her patience. You follow her deeper, the forest thickening, owls hooting in her honor. Artemis isn't just about hunting. She's the guardian of young girls, and childbirth, a role that feels at odds with her wild vibe. You recall her mother Leto, hunted by Hera's wrath, and how Artemis was born, first helping deliver Apollo. That strength runs deep, and you see it now as she pauses by a stream, blessing a mortal girl's prayer for safety. Her touch is gentle, but her bow's never far, and you're starting to get her. She's fierce love protecting what's hers, with arrow or mercy. Let's pause for a chuckle. Artemis's forest is like a divine no boys allowed club, and her hounds are better bouncers than Cerberus. The mood shifts as you notice her other side. She's not all moonlight and mercy. Cross her, and you're done. You hear whispers of Niobe, a mortal queen who bragged her kids outshone Artemis's divine birth. Big mistake. Artemis and Apollo rained arrows, wiping out Niobe's children. You shudder, the forest suddenly colder. The Greeks saw her as a goddess of balance, nurturing but merciless, life and death in one breath. You're running now, keeping pace, as Artemis hunts a boar, its tusks gleaming like daggers. Her nymphs chant their voices, weaving a hymn that makes the trees sway. You're caught in the rhythm, the hunt, a ritual, not just a chase. She fells the boar, and you see her offer its heart to the moon, her silver light brighter for it. You're starting to understand her worship mortals, left offerings at forest altars, not for favor, but respect, knowing she could bless or curse with a glance. Her independence is magnetic, and you're wishing you had half her confidence. Here's another light jab. Artemis probably invented the original off-the-grid lifestyle, and her Wi-Fi password is just, leave me alone. You're starting to see her role in the Greek cosmos. She's freedom, the wild heart that no god, not even Zeus, can tame. You recall Apollo's golden reign, his structured light, and Artemis feels like his opposite, untamed, unpredictable, yet just as vital. You're hooked, but you're also noticing her distance from Olympus. She's here, not there, and you're betting she likes it that way, far from Hera's schemes and Zeus's ego. You pause by a clearing where Artemis dances with her nymphs, their laughter soft but fierce. It's rare, this joy, and you're savoring it, the moonlight painting them in silver. She's not just a hunter, she's a sister, a leader, her nymphs, her chosen family. You're tempted to join, but her hounds growl, and you rethink it. Instead, you watch her bless a fawn, nudging it towards safety, and you see her duality killer and keeper, a goddess who loves her wild things, even as she hunts them. The Greeks told these stories to honor nature's complexity, and you're feeling it, the forest alive with her spirit. You're nearing a mortal village now, where girls offer bows and flowers at Artemis's shrine, praying for courage. She lingers unseen, her presence a cool breeze, and you see their faces light up. She's their champion, and you're struck by her quiet power. You recall Poseidon's raging seas, Hades' grim order, and Athena's calculated wisdom. Artemis is none of these. She's instinct raw and pure, and you're starting to love her for it. But you're also wary. Her arrows don't miss, and her grudges are eternal. You slip back to the forest, where Artemis is tracking a new quarry, a poacher, you realize, who's hunted her sacred deer. Her face hardens, and you're holding your breath as she draws her bow. The arrow flies, and the poacher falls, transformed into a stag, mid-scream. You're chilled, but you get it. She's the wilderness's judge, and her justice is swift. The nymphs nod, the hounds howl, and you're glad you're just a guest here, not a rule breaker. One last smirk. Artemis's hunt is like a divine obstacle course, and the prize is not getting turned into venison. You're caught up in her world, its moonlight and menace as gripping as Apollo's sun. The forest hums with her energy, but you're ready to move on, curious about the next Olympian and their chaos. For now, you linger the moon high and let Artemis's silver glow guide you toward the next chapter of this divine saga. You've just slipped out of Artemis's moonlit forest, the echo of her hound's howls fading as you're thrust into a blood-soaked battlefield, the air thick with smoke and the clang of bronze. This is Ares' domain, god of war, violence, and raw carnage, and you're dodging his warpath, caught in the chaos of his reckless battles. The ground trembles under chariot wheels, and you're weaving through clashing warriors, trying to keep your eyes on Ares, himself, a towering figure in spiked armor, his spear dripping red. His world is brutal, and you're here to witness its fury, hoping to survive the storm. Ares charges through the fray, his laughter wild, almost manic, as he cuts down foes with a sword that sings of slaughter. He's Zeus and Hera's son, but there's no Olympian polish here. He's all primal rage, his eyes burning with a hunger for blood. You're keeping your distance, the air sharp with the tang of iron and sweat. His chariot pulled by fire-breathing stallions tears past, and you duck, heart pounding. This isn't Artemis's calculated hunt, or Apollo's radiant glory. Ares is war's ugly heart, and you're struggling to find anything redeeming in his chaos. You follow him across the battlefield, dodging arrows and broken shields. Warriors scream his name, some in worship, others in terror. And you see his power. His presence fuels their frenzy, turning men into beasts. He's not just fighting. He's reveling his spear a blur as he carves through enemies like they're nothing. You're starting to get why the Greeks didn't love him like Athena or Apollo. He's necessary, maybe, but he's a wrecking ball, and you're wondering how he fits in Olympus's shiny halls. Historians cite Homer's Iliad around the 8th century BCE, where Ares is a divisive figure, often humiliated for his recklessness, a mainstream fact of his volatile myth. But here's a quirky tidbit. Some ancient sources, like the poet Anacreon, claim Ares once got trapped in a bronze jar by two giants, whining until Hermes bailed him out. A war god stuck in a pot, you smirk, picturing his ego bruised worse than his armor. Scholars still argue whether these stories were meant to mock Ares or show that even war can be humbled. Is he a brute or a victim of his own nature? You're not sure, but his roars make you lean toward brute. You're sprinting now, trying to keep up, as Ares storms a mortal city, its walls crumbling under his assault. He's not alone. His sons, Phobos and Deimos, fear and panic personified, flank him, their grins as unsettling as his. You're dodging their aura, a wave of dread that makes your knees weak. Ares doesn't strategize like Athena. He's instinct, smashing through defenses with raw force. You see a mortal general pray to him, offering blood-soaked spoils, and Ares nods. But there's no warmth, just a hunger for more. You're starting to see the Greek view of war. It's not glorious. It's a monster. And Ares is its face. Let's pause for a chuckle. Ares' battlefield is like a divine mosh pit, and he's the guy shoving everyone for fun. The mood shifts as you notice his other side, rare but real. He's not just destruction. He's passion, the spark that drives men to fight for home or honor. You catch him pausing by a wounded soldier, not helping, but watching his face unreadable. Is it respect or indifference? You're not sure, but it's a glimpse of depth in a god who seems all surface. The Greeks told these stories to grapple with war's cost, and you're feeling it, the thrill and the horror all at once. You're weaving through the chaos, the ground slick with mud and worse. Ares clashes with Athena, who's here defending the city. Her spear dances precise and deadly, while his swings are wild, fueled by rage. She outsmarts him, tripping his chariot, and you cheer quietly as he tumbles, cursing. You recall Athena's birth, her cool-headed wisdom, and you're seeing why she's war's better half. Ares scrambles up undeterred and charges again, but you're betting on her. Their rivalry is electric, and you're caught in the sparks, wondering how Olympus handles these family feuds. Here's another light jab. Ares fights like he's auditioning for a divine cage match, but his win record's looking shaky. You're starting to understand his role in the Greek cosmos. He's the chaos of war, untamed and unapologetic, a contrast to Athena's strategy or Artemis's precision. You slip to a quieter edge of the battlefield, where mortals offer sacrifices to Ares, their hands trembling. They don't love him. They fear him, praying to appease the storm. You're struck by their desperation, and you're wondering if Ares even cares. His power is real, but it's lonely, and you're starting to pity him just a little. You're back in the thick of it, Ares rallying a fresh wave of warriors. His voice is a war cry shaking the sky, and you feel the pull, a primal urge to join the fight. You resist, clinging to reason, But you get why mortals fall under his spell. He's not just a god, he's adrenaline, the rush that drowns fear. You see a young soldier barely grown charge with Ares' name on his lips, only to fall to an arrow. Ares doesn't flinch, moving on, and you're chilled by his detachment. The Greeks saw war as a force beyond control, and Ares embodies that beautiful, terrible, unstoppable. You pause by a shattered temple, its altar stained with offerings to Ares. A priestess braver than most, prays not for victory, but for peace. And you see a flicker in Ares' eyes, curiosity maybe, or annoyance. It's gone fast, and he's back to slaughter. But you're holding on to that moment. You recall Poseidon's temper, Artemis's independence, and you're seeing Ares as their dark mirror passion, without purpose, strength without soul. Yet he's Zeus's son, Hera's favorite, and you're wondering why they indulge him. Is it love or fear of what he'd do unchained? You're nearing the battle's end, the field littered with broken bodies and weapons. Ares stands atop a hill, bloodied but unbowed, his stallion snorting fire. He's glorious in a twisted way, and you're torn. His energy is magnetic, but his path is ruin. You hear whispers of his lover Aphrodite, and you're curious how beauty pairs with brutality. But that's a story for later. For now, you're watching him survey his work. No joy, just a grim nod. The Greeks told these stories to face war's truth, and you're feeling it. The cost, the pull, the emptiness left behind. One last smirk, Ares' warpath, is like a divine tantrum, and Olympus probably keeps him on a leash for everyone's sake. You're caught up in his world, its violence and vitality, as gripping as Artemis's hunt. The battlefield quiets, smoke curling into the sky, and you're ready to move on, curious about the next Olympian and their chaos. For now, you slip away the echo of Ares' war cry fading, and let the next chapter pull you forward. You've just escaped Ares' blood-soaked battlefield, the clang of his spear still ringing in your ears as you're whisked into a softer, sweeter realm. The air shimmers with jasmine and rose, and you're standing on a beach at dawn, waves lapping gently and petals drifting like confetti. This is Aphrodite's domain, goddess of love, beauty, and desire, and you're about to unravel her charms, caught in the whirl of her divine romance games. Her laughter floats on the breeze, and you're already half enchanted, but you're keeping your wits. Love's a tricky spell, and Aphrodite's the master caster. You spot her lounging on a seashell throne, her golden hair catching the sunrise, her smile dangerous and inviting. She's not just beautiful, she's a force, her presence making the world feel brighter, warmer, riskier. Born from sea foam after Cronus' brutal takedown of Uranus, she's no Olympian by birth, but claimed her place through sheer allure. You're drawn closer, dodging doves that flutter around her, their coos like a love song. She's Zeus's daughter in some tales, but here she's her own queen, and you're starting to see why gods and mortals fall at her feet. Aphrodite's not alone. Her son Eros, a winged imp with a bow, hovers nearby, his arrows tipped with mischief. You duck as he aims playfully, not keen on falling for the next seagull. Aphrodite's games are everywhere, a mortal couple on the shore, their eyes locked in new love. A god, maybe Hermes, blushing as she teases him. Even the waves seem to curl toward her. She's love's spark, but also its chaos, and you're wondering how she wields so much power without a throne on Olympus. Historians cite Hesiod's Theogony around 700 BCE for her foam-born origin, a mainstream fact tying her to creation's primal edge. But here's a quirky tidbit. Some ancient sources, like the poet Sappho, claim Aphrodite once disguised herself as a mortal to seduce a shepherd, only to ditch him when he got clingy. A goddess catfishing for fun. You grin, imagining her ghosting him mid-pasture. Scholars still argue whether these stories show her as capricious or just a goddess exploring love's many faces. Is she a romantic or a heartbreaker? You're leaning toward both, but you're watching her closely, wary of her charm. You follow her to a mortal festival where lovers offer roses and wine at her altar. She's there, unseen, her laughter stirring their hearts. A young woman prays for courage to confess her love, and Aphrodite's touch, a soft breeze, makes her glow. You're touched, but then you see a man struck by Eros's arrow, chasing someone who scorns him. Love's not all sweet, and Aphrodite's smile doesn't falter as pain mixes with passion. You're starting to get her. She's not just beauty. She's desire's double-edged cutting as often as it caresses. Let's pause for a chuckle. Aphrodite's basically running a divine dating app, and her algorithm's set to maximum drama. The mood shifts as you notice her other side. She's not just sparking romance, she's igniting wars. You recall Ares, his brutal warpath, and now you're seeing their affair, love and war tangled in a dangerous dance. Aphrodite's married to Hephaestus, the smith god, but her heart's with Ares, and you're betting that's a scandal. Even Olympus can't hush. Her love for Ares birthed Harmonia, goddess of harmony, which is ironic, given the chaos their passion stirs. You're whisked to a divine banquet where Aphrodite's charm holds court. Gods lean toward her, even Zeus, though Hera's glare keeps him in check. You recall Hera's wrath, her vendettas against Zeus's lovers, and you're wondering how Aphrodite dodges her. Maybe it's her smile, or maybe Hera knows love's too wild to cage. Aphrodite toasts the room, her goblet spilling nectar, and you feel the pull of warmth that makes you want to confess your secrets. You resist clinging to reason, but you're starting to see why mortals built temples to her. Their prayers more desperate than reverent. Here's another light jab. Aphrodite's love games are like a cosmic reality show, and she's the producer who thrives on the mess. You're starting to understand her role in the Greek cosmos. She's the spark that drives life from mortal kisses to divine feuds. You slip to a mortal city where poets sing of her their verses, weaving love with pain. She's their muse, but also their torment, and you're struck by her power, intangible yet unstoppable. You recall Artemis's fierce independence, Ares' raw fury, and Aphrodite feels like their bridge passion that's both free and destructive. You're back on her beach now, the waves glowing under her influence. She's weaving a girdle, a magical belt that amplifies her charm, and you're tempted to try it on. Imagine the confidence boost, but Eros's grin stops you. Instead, you watch her bless a mortal, wedding the couple radiant under her gaze. It's beautiful, but you're also seeing the shadow love's fleeting, and Aphrodite doesn't promise forever. The Greeks told these stories to grapple with desire's grip, and you're feeling it. The thrill, the risk, the ache of wanting what might break you. You're nearing a darker tale, now one of Aphrodite's meddling. A mortal psyche catches her eye, too beautiful for comfort. Jealous Aphrodite sends Eros to curse her, but he falls for Psyche instead, sparking a saga of trials and love. You're impressed by Aphrodite's reach, how her whims ripple through mortal lives. She's not cruel like Hera or reckless like Ares. She's playful, but her games have stakes. You're starting to pity Psyche, but also admire Aphrodite's cunning, She's a goddess who knows her power and wields it like a blade. You pause by a shrine, its altar piled with shells and pearls. Mortals here don't just pray for love. They beg for mercy, knowing Aphrodite's gifts come with chaos. You see her watching, her expression soft but unreadable, and you're struck by her complexity. She's not just a pretty face. She's creation's pulse, the force that binds and breaks. You recall Athena's wisdom, Apollo's light, and you're seeing Aphrodite as their equal, less predictable, but no less vital. Her affair with Ares, her spats with Hera, her sway over Zeus, they're all part of her game, and you're betting she's winning. One last smirk. Aphrodite's basically the goddess of you'll fall in love. But good luck with the terms and conditions. You're caught up in her world, its beauty and danger swirling like her sea foam. The beach hums with her energy, but you're ready to move on, curious about the next Olympian and their chaos. For now, you linger the waves whispering her name, and let Aphrodite's charm carry you toward the next chapter of this divine saga. You've just drifted away from Aphrodite's rose-scented beach, her laughter still echoing as you're plunged into a smoky, sweltering workshop deep within a volcanic mountain. The air crackles with heat and the clang of metal, and you're standing in Hephaestus's fiery forge, where the god of fire, blacksmithing, and craftsmanship hammers out divine weapons. Sparks fly like tiny stars, and you're here to explore his world, marveling at his creations while dodging the molten chaos of his craft. The forge's glow lights up his scarred face, and you're ready to see what makes this Olympian tick. Hephaestus limps forward, his massive arms swinging a hammer that could crush boulders. He's not handsome like Apollo or fierce like Ares. His body's twisted, his legs braced with bronze supports, but his eyes burn with focus, and his hands move with a grace that belies his rough exterior. You're struck by his intensity. This is Zeus, and Hera's son, cast out of Olympus as a baby for his imperfections. Yet he's built a kingdom here, turning fire into art. The forge roars, and you're already sweating, but you're too fascinated to back away. You step closer, dodging a shower of sparks, as Hephaestus shapes a thunderbolt for Zeus, its edges crackling with power. His workshop is a maze of anvils, bellows, and half-finished wonders, shields that shimmer like mirrors, a golden net that pulses with magic, even a mechanical owl that whirs softly. You're in awe. He's not just a smith, but a genius crafting tools that shape the god's world. He grunts, tossing a finished spear to a waiting Cyclops, and you recall the Titanomachy, how his weapons helped Zeus win. His creations are legendary, and you're starting to see why the Greeks revered him, despite his outcast status. Historians point to Homer's Iliad, around the 8th century BCE, where Hephaestus crafts Achilles' divine armor, a mainstream fact, highlighting his role as the god's armorer. But here's a quirky tidbit. Some ancient sources, like the poet Alcaeus, claim Hephaestus once built a talking bronze horse that spooked even Athena. A chatty robot pony, you smirk, imagining it neighing bad puns. Scholars still argue whether these tales were meant to show his ingenuity or just add flair to his myth. Is he a craftsman or a sorcerer? You're leaning toward both, but his hammer's rhythm keeps you grounded. You follow him to a cooling pool where he dunks a glowing sword, steam hissing like a dragon's breath. His limp slows him, a reminder of Hera's cruelty she threw him from Olympus, ashamed of his flaws. Yet he's no victim. He built this forge, married Aphrodite, and earned Zeus's respect. You're impressed by his resilience, but you're also catching whispers of pain. His marriage to Aphrodite is a sore spot. Her affair with Ares, which you glimpsed on the battlefield, stings more than any fire. You're starting to see the Greek knack for flawed gods. Even the master of creation can't forge a perfect life. Let's pause for a chuckle. Hephaestus's forge is like a divine chop shop, and he's the guy who'd build a tank just to one-up Ares. The mood shifts as you notice his softer side. He's crafting a delicate necklace for Demeter, its gems shaped like wheat, and you see care in his calloused hands. He's not just about war gear. He's an artist making beauty for a world that often overlooks him. You're starting to like him, not for flash, but for grit, the kind that turns rejection into mastery. You're weaving through the forge, now dodging automatons, bronze servants that clank and whir fetching tools. Hephaestus built them, and you're half expecting one to offer you a coffee. His ingenuity is staggering, but it's his defiance that hooks you. You recall Aphrodite's charm, how she sways gods and mortals, yet Hephaestus caught her and Ares in a golden net, exposing their affair to Olympus's laughter. It was petty, sure, but you're cheering for him, outcast, or not, he's got spine. The gods mocked him, but he walked away hammer in hand, and you're betting he's still smirking. Here's another light jab. Hephaestus's love life is like a soap opera, where the hero's best line is, "I made a trap for that." You're starting to understand his role in the Greek cosmos. He's creation's fire, the spark that turns ideas into reality. You slip to a mortal city, where blacksmiths pray to him, their forges lit with his blessing. They don't see his scars, they see his strength, and you're struck by his quiet influence. Unlike Ares' chaos or Aphrodite's whims, Hephaestus builds, and his work endures. You're back in the forge, watching him craft a shield for Athena, its surface etched with scenes of peace, not war. It's a surprise she's a warrior, but he knows her heart, and you're seeing their bond, a mutual respect for skill. You recall Athena's birth, her wisdom born from Zeus's skull, and you're wondering if Hephaestus sees her as a kindred spirit, both underestimated, both brilliant. The shield glows, and you're tempted to touch it, but a cyclops glares, and you back off. This forge isn't just a workshop. It's a sanctuary where flaws become power. You're nearing a quieter corner where Hephaestus sits, sketching a new design, a chariot that flies maybe for Apollo. His face softens, lost in thought, and you see the artist, not the outcast. Mortals tell stories of his creations, Pandora's jar, Achilles' armor, and you're struck by his legacy. He's not loved like Aphrodite or feared like Ares, but he's essential, the god who makes the god's world work. You're starting to get the Greek view creation is messy, but it's vital, and Hephaestus is its beating heart. You pause by a molten river, its glow reflecting its scars. He's not bitter, but he's guarded, and you're wondering what he dreams of beyond this forge. His marriage to Aphrodite is a wound, yet he crafts for her, maybe hoping to win her heart. You recall Hera's wrath, how she punished Zeus's lovers, and you're glad Hephaestus dodged her worst. His strength is his work, and you're betting he'd rather hammer out a new world than dwell on pain. The forge hums, and you're caught in its rhythm, the fire a mirror of his will. You're nearing the forge's exit, the heat fading as you step into cooler air. Hephaestus is back at his anvil, shaping a crown for Hera, and you see irony. He honors the mother who rejected him. The Greeks told these stories to grapple with imperfection, and you're feeling it. Even gods carry scars, but they create anyway. You're hooked, but you're also ready for the next Olympian curious about their world. For now, you linger the forge's glow warm, and let Hephaestus's fire carry you toward the next chapter. One last smirk. Hephaestus's forge is like a divine Etsy shop, but with more explosions and fewer scented candles. You're caught up in his world, its heat and heart as gripping as Aphrodite's charm. The workshop hums with his energy, but you're ready to move on, eager for the next god's tale. You step away, the clang of his hammer fading, and let the next chapter pull you forward. You've just stepped out of Hephaestus's fiery forge, the clang of his hammer still echoing as you're whisked into a whirlwind of speed and mischief. The air crackles with a playful energy, and you're sprinting to keep up with Hermes' god, of messengers' trade and trickery, as he zips through a bustling mortal marketplace. His winged sandals blur, his caduceus staff glints, and you're chasing his sneaky tricks, dodging the chaos he leaves in his wake. This is Hermes' world, fast and cunning, and you're here to catch him if you can. You spot him weaving through market stalls, his boyish grin disarming merchants as he borrows an apple here, a coin there. He's not just a thief, he's a charmer. His laughter like a breeze that makes you forget your wallet's gone. Hermes is Zeus's son, born to the nymph Maya, and you're seeing his Olympian spark part, Apollo's charisma part, Athena's wit, but all his own. He's the gods' courier, but also their prankster, and you're already half charmed, half wary, knowing his tricks could turn on you. The market hums, and you're diving into his game. Hermes pauses, leaning against a cart, his winged hat tilted just so. He's not just messing around. He's working, delivering Zeus's latest decree to a mortal king. You follow dodging donkeys and hawkers as he slips into a palace, his sandals silent on marble. The king bows, awed by Hermes' divine glow, and you're impressed. He's not just a rogue, but a diplomat, bridging mortal and divine with a wink. His caduceus, two snakes twined around a staff, hums with power guiding souls or sealing deals. You're starting to see why the Greeks loved him. He's everywhere, unstoppable, slick as quicksilver. Historians cite the Homeric hymn to Hermes around the 7th century BCE for his origin as a trickster who stole Apollo's cattle as a baby, a mainstream fact of his audacious myth. But here's a quirky tidbit. Some ancient sources, like the poet Alcaeus, claim Hermes once invented a lyre from a tortoise shell, gifting it to Apollo to dodge a divine spanking. A musical peace offering. You smirk, picturing him strumming his way out of trouble. Scholars still argue whether these stories paint him as a lovable rogue or a cunning manipulator. Is he a hero or a hustler? You're leaning toward both, but his grin keeps you guessing. You're running again. Hermes darting through a forest, now his sandals kicking up dust. He's on a divine errand, delivering a message to Athena, and you're struggling to keep pace. He leaps over streams, teases a nymph, and pockets a shiny stone, all without breaking stride. You're exhausted, but hooked. His energy is infectious, like he's rewriting the rules of reality. You recall Aphrodite's charm, how she bends hearts, and Hermes feels like her shadow, bending minds, slipping through cracks, always one step ahead. Let's pause for a chuckle. Hermes' life is like a divine heist movie, and he's the guy who'd steal the popcorn, too. The mood shifts as you see his serious side. He's guiding a mortal soul to Hades' underworld, his caduceus glowing softly. The shade, a trembling old man, clings to him, and Hermes' voice is gentle, not mocking. You're surprised he's not just a trickster. He's a psychopomp, escorting the dead, with a kindness that feels out of character. The Styx looms, and you're glad you're not crossing. But you're seeing Hermes' depth. He's chaos, but also connection tying life to death. You're back in the mortal world, where Hermes visits a merchant's stall, blessing a trade deal with a nod. The coins gleam brighter, and you see his other role, god of commerce, making wealth flow like his footsteps. Merchants pray to him, not with grand altars, but quick nods, knowing he's watching. You're starting to get his vibe. He's not about glory like Ares or wisdom like Athena. He's movement, the pulse of exchange, whether it's words, goods, or souls. You're tempted to haggle with a vendor, but Hermes' wink warns you he'd outsmart you in a heartbeat. Here's another light jab. Hermes probably invented the phrase, "You snooze, you lose," then pickpocketed the snoozer. You're starting to understand his role in the Greek cosmos. He's the glue between realms, mortal and divine life and death. You slip to an Olympic feast, where he's juggling goblets, teasing Poseidon while delivering Zeus's orders. Even Hera laughs, and you're impressed. He's the only god who can charm her. You recall Hephaestus's quiet strength, Aphrodite's dangerous allure, and Hermes feels like their spark, less heavy, but no less vital. You're chasing him again, this time to a mortal city, where thieves whisper his name, half praying, half cursing. Hermes doesn't judge. He grins, maybe slipping them an extra shadow to hide in. You're torn. His mischief fuels crime, but also cunning, the kind that outwits tyrants. You see a boy, barely a teen, swipe bread to feed his sister, and Hermes' breeze nudges him to safety. It's not justice like Athena's, but it's mercy, and you're starting to like him, not just for his tricks, but for his heart buried under layers of sly. You're nearing a sacred grove where Hermes pauses, his sandals still. He's carved a Herm, a stone pillar, with his face marking a crossroads. Mortals leave offerings, coins, figs, and you see his influence subtle but wide. He's not worshipped like Apollo or feared like Ares. He's trusted a god who gets it, who knows life's a hustle. You recall Artemis's wild independence, and Hermes feels like her urban twin, free, but tied to people, not forests. You're betting he'd charm her hounds, then steal their bones. You're back on his trail, watching him prank Apollo, hiding his lyre under a cloud. Apollo's fuming, but Hermes laughs, tossing it back with a bow, and you're grinning. Nobody holds a grudge against him for long. His tricks aren't cruel, just clever, and you're starting to see why Olympus keeps him around. He's the messenger who softens Zeus's thunder, the thief who steals tension from divine spats. You're wondering what he'd do with real power, but you're glad he's content to run, not rule. You pause by a river, where Hermes blesses a traveler with safe passage. It's quiet, and you see his calm, a flicker of the god who guides souls. The Greeks told these stories to honor life's flux, and you're feeling it, nothing still, and Hermes is its spirit. You're hooked, but you're also ready for the next Olympian, curious about their world. For now, you linger the breeze carrying his laughter, and let Hermes' speed carry you toward the next chapter. One last smirk. Hermes' tricks are like divine Wi-Fi, connecting everyone, but dropping bars when you need him most. You're caught up in his world, its wit and whirl, as gripping as Hephaestus's fire. The marketplace hums with his energy, but you're ready to move on, eager for the next god's tale. You dash after him one last time, then step away, his winged shadow fading, and let the next chapter pull you forward. You've just darted away from Hermes' whirlwind of tricks, his winged sandals a blur in your memory as you're pulled into a golden field, ripe with swaying wheat under a warm sun. The air smells of harvest and earth, but there's a chill beneath it, a quiet ache. This is Demeter's domain, goddess of agriculture and the harvest, and you're here to feel her grief, the sorrow that starves the earth for her daughter Persephone. The fields hum with life, but Demeter's shadow looms, and you're stepping softly, sensing her pain like a storm waiting to break. You spot her in the distance, kneeling among the stalks, her hands trailing over the grain, as if coaxing it to grow. Her golden hair is streaked with gray, her face etched with worry that wasn't there when you saw her on Olympus. She's Zeus's sister, a core Olympian, but here she's a mother first, her heart tied to Persephone, stolen by Hades. You're drawn to her, the air heavy with her quiet strength, but you're also bracing for the fallout. Her grief isn't just personal, it's cosmic, and you're about to see why the earth suffers when she mourns. You follow her through the field, the wheat parting like a sea. She's tending the harvest, her touch making crops flourish, but her eyes are distant, searching for a daughter who's not here. You recall Hades' underworld, its cold grip, and how Persephone, Demeter's only child, was snatched to be his queen. The story's raw Persephone was picking flowers when Hades' chariot burst from the earth, dragging her below. Demeter heard her scream, but arrived too late, and you're feeling the echo of that loss, the ground itself seeming to sigh under her feet. Demeter pauses, clutching a poppy, its red petals stark against her pale hands. She's not just grieving. She's raging her sorrow, a force that withers the field around her. You see the wheat droop, the soil crack, and you're starting to understand her power. She's the goddess who feeds the world, but she can starve it too. And she's doing just that, refusing to let crops grow until Persephone returns. Mortals are suffering below their prayers, rising like smoke, and you're caught in the tension. Her love is beautiful, but its cost is brutal. Historians cite the Homeric hymn to Demeter around the 7th century BCE for this myth, a mainstream fact tying her grief to the season's cycle. But here's a quirky tidbit. Some ancient sources like the poet Pamphos claim Demeter once disguised herself as a mortal nurse to escape her pain, accidentally turning a human baby into a god by bathing him in fire. A divine nanny with a fiery streak. You smirk, imagining her juggling grief and babysitting. Scholars still argue whether this story softens her image or underscores her desperate need for control. Is she a nurturing mother or a goddess pushed to extremes? You're leaning toward both, but her trembling hands keep you focused. You're walking beside her now, the field fading into a barren plain. Demeter's grief has drained it, and you're dodging cracked earth, the air sharp with hunger. She's searching for Persephone, questioning nymphs and rivers, but no one talks either. They're scared of Hades or bound by Zeus's silence. You're frustrated for her recalling Zeus's ego and Hades' quiet rule. Zeus allowed the abduction, and you're betting Demeter's fury burns hotter for him than for Hades. She's not just fighting for her daughter. She's defying the king of the gods, and you're rooting for her, even if it's risky. Let's pause for a chuckle. Demeter's basically holding the earth hostage, and Zeus is probably regretting not mediating this family dinner. The mood shifts as you see her resilience. She's not broken. She's strategic, wandering mortal towns in disguise or cloak, tattered, but her will iron. You follow her to Eleusis, a city where she's welcomed as a stranger, teaching mortals secret rites to honor her. These are the Eleusinian mysteries rituals, so sacred the Greeks barely spoke of them. You're intrigued sensing their power, but you're also struck by her generosity. She's grieving, yet still giving, tying mortals to her cycle of life and death. You're back in the barren field, where Demeter confronts Zeus, her voice low but fierce. You're holding your breath as she demands Persephone's return, threatening eternal famine. Zeus for once looks uneasy, and you're cheering quietly. Nobody else dares challenge him like this. He sends Hermes to negotiate, and you recall his sly speed, how he bridges worlds. Hades agrees to release Persephone, but there's a catch. She's eaten pomegranate seeds, binding her to the underworld for part of each year. You're gutted for Demeter, but you're also seeing the compromise. Persephone will split her time, half with her mother, half with Hades. You're there when Persephone emerges, the earth blooming instantly, flowers bursting under Demeter's joy. Mother and daughter embrace, and you're blinking back tears, the field alive again, with color and warmth. But the reunion's bittersweet. Persephone's time below means winter, when Demeter mourns and the earth sleeps. You're starting to get the Greek explanation for seasons, love and loss, woven into nature's rhythm. You recall Aphrodite's chaotic passion, Hermes' fleeting tricks, and Demeter's grief feels heavier, grounding the Olympians' drama in something painfully human. Here's another light jab. Demeter's famine is like a divine no crops, no peace strike, and Zeus is definitely signing the deal under duress. You're starting to understand her role in the Greek cosmos. She's life's pulse, the mother who feeds and fights. You slip to a mortal village where farmers offer the first harvest to her, their songs full of gratitude. She's their hope, and you're struck by her reach. Unlike Ares' fear or Aphrodite's whims, her power is tangible, rooted in the earth they walk. You're back with Demeter, watching her teach Persephone to tend the fields, their laughter soft but fleeting. The underworld's shadow lingers, and you're wondering how Demeter copes, knowing her daughter's never fully hers. She's strong, but you see cracks. Her hands tremble when Persephone mentions Hades. You recall Hera's wrath, how she fights for control, and Demeter's battle feels purer, driven by love, not pride. Yet her grief reshaped the world, and you're betting Zeus keeps a closer eye on her now. You pause by a sacred grove, Demeter's altar piled with wheat and poppies. Mortals here don't just pray for harvests. They seek her strength, knowing loss like hers. You see her watching, her face softer now, and you're struck by her duality, goddess and mother, giver and taker. You're hooked, but you're also ready for the next Olympian, curious about their world. For now, you linger, the field's warmth fading, and let Demeter's story carry you toward the next chapter. One last smirk. Demeter's basically the goddess of eat your veggies, or the world ends, and she's not bluffing. You're caught up in her world, its life and loss, as gripping as Hermes' speed. The field hums with her energy, but you're ready to move on, eager for the next god's tale. You step away the wheat, whispering her name, and let the next chapter pull you forward. You've just left Demeter's golden fields, the weight of her grief still lingering as you're swept into a wild, pulsing revelry under a starlit sky. The air is thick with wine and laughter, and you're stumbling into Dionysus's domain, god of wine, ecstasy, and untamed joy. You're joining his chaotic party, where mortals and maenads, his frenzied followers, dance to pounding drums, their faces flushed with divine madness. Dionysus himself spins at the center, ivy crowned, his leopard skin cloak swirling, and you're here to dive into his world, bracing for the wild ride. The night hums, and you're already caught in the beat. You push through the crowd, dodging goblets and grappling dancers. Dionysus is Zeus's son, born to the mortal Semele, and you're struck by his vibe part. God part rebel, all charisma. His eyes glint with mischief, but there's a dangerous edge, like he could tip the party into chaos with a wink. He's not an Olympian by birthright, yet he's carved a place among them, and you're starting to see why. He raises a thyrsus, a staff topped with a pine cone, and the crowd roars wine flowing like rivers. You're tempted to join, but you're keeping your head. Dionysus's revelry is a trap as much as a gift. The party spills into a vineyard, grapes gleaming under moonlight. Dionysus plucks one, and it bursts into wine, staining his fingers red. He's not just about fun. He's the god of transformation, turning fruit to ecstasy mortals, to madmen. You see maenads tear through the vines, their screams half joy, half fury, and you're dodging their wild swings. They're possessed, driven by his power, and you're starting to get why the Greeks both worshipped and feared him. His cult was real. Historians cite Euripides' Bacchae around 405 BCE, where Dionysus's worship is both sacred and savage, a mainstream fact of his dual nature. But here's a quirky tidbit. Some ancient sources, like the poet Cronus, claim Dionysus once got so drunk he mistook a tree for a rival god, arguing with it until dawn. A god beefing with a pine. You smirk, picturing him slurring divine insults. Scholars still argue whether these stories humanize him or warn of his chaotic pull. Is he a liberator or a destroyer? You're leaning toward both, but his laughter keeps you spinning, unsure where the night's headed. You're dancing now, the drums pulling you in despite yourself. Dionysus is everywhere, pouring wine, leading chants, whispering to mortals who sway like reeds. He's not just a party host, he's a liberator, breaking chains of reason and shame. You see a shy mortal, rigid with fear, drink from his cup and laugh free for the first time. It's beautiful, but you're also seeing the edge another mortal too deep in the wine collapses, lost to the madness. Dionysus doesn't flinch, and you're chilled by his indifference. His gift is freedom, but it's not always kind. Let's pause for a chuckle. Dionysus's party is like a divine rave, where the DJ's also the drug, and you're not sure if you're dancing or doomed. The mood shifts as you follow him to a mortal city, where his cult clashes with a king who bans his worship. Pentheus, the king, scorns Dionysus, calling him a fraud. Big mistake. You watch heart pounding as Dionysus lures him to a maenad-filled mountain. The women, maddened, tear Pentheus apart, mistaking him for a beast. You're horrified the violence raw, but you're also seeing Dionysus's power. He's not just joy, he's vengeance, punishing those who deny his divinity. You're back in the vineyard, the air softer now as Dionysus leads a quieter rite. His followers offer wine and ivy, their faces calm, almost holy. You're surprised he's not all chaos. He's sacred, a god of rebirth, through ecstasy. You recall Demeter's grief, her tie to Earth's cycles, and Dionysus feels like her wild cousin, life's pulse, but unhinged, flowing through vines instead of wheat. His worshippers seek transcendence, and you're tempted to sip his wine, but you're wary of losing yourself. The Greeks told these stories to explore passion's limits, and you're feeling it. The pull, the danger, the thrill. Here's another light jab. Dionysus probably invented the phrase, "go big or go home," then burned the home down for fun. You're starting to understand his role in the Greek cosmos. He's the spark that frees and destroys, a god who blurs lines between mortal and divine. You slip to a theater where actors perform in his honor, their masks channeling his spirit. Dionysus watches, grinning, and you see his other gift drama born from his rites. The Greeks built festivals like the Dionysia for him, and you're struck by his reach-shaping art as much as madness. You're back at the revel where Dionysus dances with Ariadne, a mortal princess he saved and loved. She's his anchor, her calm balancing his wild, and you're touched by their bond. You recall Aphrodite's love games, how she weaves desire, and Dionysus feels like her echo passion, but rawer, less controlled. His affair with Ariadne defied Zeus's rules, and you're betting Hera's got him on her list. For now, he's untouchable, spinning Ariadne under the stars, and you're seeing his heart buried under the wine and chaos. You're nearing a sacred grove where Dionysus blesses his followers, with visions their eyes wide with divine truth. It's eerie, and you're keeping your distance, not ready for his mysteries. Mortals here don't just pray. They surrender, offering their sanity for a glimpse of eternity. You see his power, unlike Hermes' fleeting tricks or Ares' brutal force. Dionysus reshapes souls. You're starting to pity those who resist him like Pentheus, but you're also glad you're just a guest, not a convert. His energy is a tide, and you're fighting to stay afloat. You pause by a vine-covered altar, its stones slick with wine. Dionysus lingers, his thyrsus glowing, and you see his duality god and mortal joy and terror. You recall Artemis's wild hunt, her fierce freedom, and Dionysus feels like her twin in spirit, untamed, but tied to human passion, not forests. His followers chant their voices a hymn that shakes the earth, and you're caught in the sound, almost forgetting the danger. The Greeks saw him as life's excess, and you're feeling it, the rush of losing control, the fear of going too far. You're nearing the night's end, the stars fading, as Dionysus slows his revel, quieting. He's still smiling, but there's a weight now, like he knows his freedom comes at a cost. You see a mortal sober, now weeping for what the wine showed him, and Dionysus doesn't look away. He's not cruel, just honest, his truth cuts, and you're respecting him for it. You're ready for the next Olympian curious about their world, but you're hooked on this one, its madness and meaning swirling like his wine. One last smirk. Dionysus's party is like a divine kegger, where the hangover's eternal, and he's handing out refills. You're caught up in his world, its ecstasy and edge, as gripping as Demeter's grief. The vineyard hums with his energy, but you're ready to move on, eager for the next god's tale. You step away, the drums fading, and let the next chapter pull you forward. You've just stumbled out of Dionysus's wild revel, the tang of wine still on your tongue, as you're thrust into a smoky, starlit plain, where a lone figure stands clutching a glowing ember. The air crackles with defiance, and you're face to face with Prometheus the Titan, who dared steal fire from Zeus to gift it to mortals. You're here to watch his bold theft, a rebel's act that flips the divine order and sparks Zeus's wrath. The ground hums with tension, and you're creeping closer, heart pounding, ready to witness a heist that'll change the world. Prometheus is no Olympian. He's a Titan, one of Iapetus's sons, a survivor of the Titanomachy. You saw end with Zeus's victory. He's lean, sharp-eyed with a smirk that says he knows he's playing with lightning literally. You're drawn to him, his quiet confidence, a contrast to Dionysus's chaos or Ares' rage. He's not fighting for glory. He's fighting for mortals, those fragile specks, You've seen praying to gods who barely notice them. The ember in his hand pulses, stolen from Zeus's own forge, and you're already sensing the fallout. This isn't just a prank, it's treason. You follow him to a mortal village, the night cold and dark, their huts barely holding against the wind. Prometheus kneels his ember, igniting a pile of twigs, and you see fire leap up, warm and alive. The mortals gasp their faces, glowing with awe, and you're struck by the moment light, where there was none hope, where there was despair. They crowd around, warming their hands, and Prometheus watches his smile soft but fierce. You're starting to get why the Greeks loved him. He's their champion, a god who saw their shivering lives and said, enough. The fire spreads mortals, learning to cook, forge, and dream under its glow. You're mesmerized, but the sky darkens, Zeus's thunder rumbling like a warning shot. Prometheus doesn't flinch. He knew the cost. You recall Zeus's throne room, his ego towering like Olympus itself, and you're betting he's not thrilled about this theft. Fire was divine, a god's only perk, and Prometheus just democratized it. Historians cite Aeschylus's Prometheus Bound, around the 5th century BCE, for this myth, a mainstream fact tying his rebellion to human progress and divine punishment. But here's a quirky tidbit. Some ancient sources, like the poet Hesiod, claim Prometheus also taught mortals to trick Zeus during sacrifices, hiding meat and offering bones. A divine BBQ scam. You smirk, picturing Zeus sniffing charred bones and fuming. Scholars still argue whether Prometheus was a selfless hero or a cunning instigator pushing mortals to defy the gods. Is he a savior or a troublemaker? You're leaning toward both, but his steady gaze keeps you rooted, believing in his cause. You're trailing him now, the mortal world brighter, but the heavens angrier. Zeus's eagles circle overhead, their screeches a bad omen, and you're dodging their shadows, nervous for Prometheus. He's not hiding. He's visiting another village, teaching smiths to shape bronze weavers to work by firelight. You see their gratitude, their lives expanding, and you're cheering for him even as thunder cracks closer. He's not just given fire, he's given power, the kind that lets mortals stand taller, dream bigger. You're starting to see the Greek view progress comes at a price, and Prometheus is paying it. Let's pause for a chuckle. Prometheus basically hot-wired Zeus's divine toolbox, and now he's handing out sparks like party favors. The mood shifts as you sense Zeus's wrath closing in. You're whisked to Olympus, where Zeus confronts Prometheus, his lightning bolt crackling with fury. The Titan stands tall, unapologetic, arguing that mortals deserve more than cold, short lives. Zeus's voice booms, accusing him of hubris, and you're holding your breath, caught in the clash of wills. Prometheus doesn't beg. He taunts, and you're both awed and terrified by his nerve. You're back on Earth now, but the scene's grim. Zeus's punishment is swift. Prometheus is chained to a jagged cliff, his body bound by unbreakable bronze, forged by Hephaestus of all gods. You wince, recalling Hephaestus's quiet strength, how he'd hate this task. An eagle swoops in, tearing at Prometheus's liver, and you look away, the pain raw even for a Titan. He grits his teeth, refusing to scream, and you're struck by his defiance. The eagle will return daily Zeus's curse, ensuring eternal torment. And you're gutted, wondering if fire was worth this. You're lingering by the cliff, the wind sharp with Prometheus's blood. Mortals below use his fire unaware of his suffering, and you're torn, his gift changed their world. But at what cost? You see a mortal smith craft a plow, a woman bake bread. and you realize Prometheus knew the stakes. He's not a god like Apollo shining for worship or Hermes slipping through trouble. He's a rebel sacrificing himself for a cause. You're starting to respect him, not just for his cunning, but for his heart buried under his smirks. Here's another light jab. Prometheus's theft is like sneaking Zeus's Wi-Fi password, then getting grounded for eternity. You're starting to understand his role in the Greek cosmos. He's the spark of defiance, the push against divine control. You slip to a mortal city where storytellers weave his tale, calling him Forethinker, his name meaning foresight. They don't pray to him like Demeter or Dionysus. They honor him, their fires lit in his name. You're struck by his legacy, how one act rippled through time, shaping humanity's climb. You're back at the cliff, Prometheus's breaths ragged but steady. He's not alone. Oceanus, a Titan ally, visits urging him to apologize, but Prometheus scoffs his pride unbroken. You recall Zeus's victory over the Titans, how Prometheus fought for him, and you're betting this betrayal stings Zeus more than the theft. The eagle returns, and you flinch, but Prometheus meets your gaze, his eyes saying, "It's worth it." You're awed, but also scared his defiance could inspire mortals, and Zeus won't let that slide. You're nearing a mortal campfire, where elders tell Prometheus's story, their faces lit by his gift. They speak of hope, how fire means more than warmth. It's knowledge, courage, life. You see his impact, the world brighter for his sacrifice, and you're starting to get the Greek view. Gods are mighty, but mortals with a Titan spark can rise. You recall Dionysus's wild freedom, Demeter's grounded love, and Prometheus feels like their bridge, divine yet human, a rebel who paid for his faith in us. You pause by a forge, its flames, a distant echo of Prometheus's ember. Mortals here don't know his pain, but they live his victory, their tools and dreams born from his fire. You see his shadow in their work, and you're struck by his reach, unlike Ares' fleeting wars or Aphrodite's fickle. Love's his gift endures. You're hooked, but you're also ready for the next tale, curious about the next figure in this divine saga. For now, you linger the fire's warmth, a reminder of Prometheus's courage, and let his story carry you forward. One last smirk. Prometheus is like the guy who stole the sun and got burned, but he'd do it again in a heartbeat. You're caught up in his world, its sacrifice, and spark, as gripping as Dionysus's revels. The plane hums with his defiance, but you're ready to move on, eager for the next chapter. You step away, the fire fading, and let the saga pull you forward. You've just left Prometheus's windswept cliff, the echo of his defiance still burning as you're pulled into a quiet, eerie meadow where a lone woman stands clutching a sealed jar. The air hums with a strange tension, and you're face to face with Pandora, the first mortal woman crafted by the gods to unleash chaos. You're here to cringe as her curiosity cracks open that cursed box or jar, really loosing evils on the world. The meadow feels too peaceful, and you're bracing for the moment it all goes wrong, knowing Zeus's wrath is behind this. Pandora's not what you expected. She's radiant, her face sculpted by Hephaestus, her grace a gift from Aphrodite, but her eyes flicker with a restless spark. She's no goddess. She's human, created as a trap for mortals after Prometheus's fire theft. You recall his sacrifice, how he gave humanity a spark, and now Zeus is hitting back using Pandora as his weapon. The jar in her hands glints its seal, pulsing like a heartbeat, and you're already dreading what's inside. You want to warn her, but you're just a shadow here watching fate unfold. You step closer, the grass soft underfoot. Pandora's curious, her fingers tracing the jar's carvings. Scenes of gods and monsters, a warning she doesn't read. She's married to Epimetheus, Prometheus's dumber brother, who accepted her despite his siblings' warnings. You roll your eyes, remembering Prometheus's foresight. Epimetheus clearly missed that gene. The gods loaded Pandora with gifts, beauty charm, even Hermes' silver tongue. But they also gave her curiosity, a trait Zeus knew would doom her. You're starting to see the Greek knack for cruel irony. The gods don't just punish, they orchestrate. Pandora paces, muttering to herself, and you catch her glancing at the jar, tempted but hesitant. The meadow's calm birds chirping, but you feel Zeus's gaze, his smirk from Olympus. This is his revenge, not just on Prometheus, but on mortals who dared rise with fire. You're nervous, recalling the Titanomachy, how Zeus crushed rebellion, and now he's playing a subtler game. Pandora's no villain, she's a pawn, and you're pitying her, even as you brace for the chaos she'll unleash. Historians cite Hesiod's Works and Days around 700 BCE for Pandora's myth, a mainstream fact, linking her to humanity's fall. But here's a quirky tidbit. Some ancient sources, like the poet Alcman, suggest Pandora's jar originally held blessings, not evils, until her curiosity mixed them with curses. A divine bait and switch, you smirk, imagining Zeus chuckling as he rigged the game. Scholars still argue whether Pandora's story blames women for evil, or just warns against defying gods. Is she a scapegoat or a symbol of human flaws? You're leaning toward both, but her trembling hands keep you focused, knowing she's about to break the seal. You're circling her now, the meadow's peace mocking the storm to come. Pandora's curiosity grows, her fingers brushing the jar's lid. She whispers, "Just a peek," and you're shouting silently, "Don't do it." But Zeus's plan is airtight. Her nature, crafted by the gods, drives her forward. She twists the lid, and you flinch as it pops open, a black mist erupting like a swarm. You're dodging shadows as evil's disease, greed, war, sorrow shriek into the world, their forms twisting into plagues and fears. The meadow wilts, the birds fall silent, and you're gutted, watching Pandora's face crumple in horror. The evils scatter, spreading to mortal villages below, and you see their impact. Crops fail. Lovers quarrel. Warriors draw swords. You're reeling, the world darker in seconds, and Pandora's sobbing, clutching the jar. She slams the lid shut, but it's too late. Only one thing remains inside, hope, trapped by her quick hands. You're torn, hope's a gift, but it's cruel, a faint light in a world now cursed. You're starting to get the Greek view, life's a struggle, and even hope can feel like a taunt when evil's loose. Let's pause for a chuckle. Pandora's jar is like a divine prank gift, labeled "Do Not Open," and she fell for it like we all would. The mood shifts as you see her guilt. She's not defiant like Prometheus. She's broken, staring at the jar, as if it could undo her mistake. Epimetheus rushes in too late, his face pale as he sees the withered meadow. You're frustrated with him. Why didn't he listen to Prometheus? But you're also pitying them, a mortal couple caught in Zeus's game. They embrace, and you're struck by their humanity, frail but clinging to each other. You're whisked to a mortal city now, where Pandora's evils take root. Sickness spreads, markets collapse, and you're dodging angry crowds, their faces twisted by greed or despair. Yet you see hope flicker. A mother tends her sick child. A farmer plants despite drought. You're surprised. Hope's weak, but it's stubborn. and you're wondering if Pandora's final act was a small rebellion against Zeus's curse. You recall Prometheus's fire, how it sparked progress, and Pandora's hope feels like its echo a mortal strength the gods can't snuff out. Here's another light jab. Pandora's curiosity is like clicking open attachment on a sketchy email, and now the world's got a virus. You're starting to understand her role in the Greek cosmos. She's humanity's mirror, flawed and fragile, yet enduring. You slip back to the meadow where Pandora buries the jar, her hands shaking. She's no hero, but she's not a villain either. She's us driven by wonder and cursed by consequence. You're struck by her ordinariness, a contrast to Dionysus's wild divinity or Prometheus's bold sacrifice. You're lingering now watching Pandora and Epimetheus walk away their steps, heavy but together. The meadow's dead, but a single flower blooms where the jar was buried, and you're clinging to that image, hope, maybe pushing through ruin. You see Zeus's hand in this, his wrath as precise as Athena's spear, and you're betting he's watching satisfied. Yet mortals endure their fires, burning their hopes, flickering, and you're starting to respect them. These ants who defy divine tantrums. You're nearing a mortal hearth where storytellers weave Pandora's tale, their voices soft but steady. They don't curse her. They mourn her, calling her all-gifted, her name, a nod to the gods' cruel design. You see her legacy mortals live with evil, but also with hope, and you're struck by the balance. You recall Demeter's grief, how it shaped seasons, and Pandora's act feels like its mortal twin, a single choice, reshaping life's rhythm. The Greeks told these stories to face suffering's truth, and you're feeling it. The weight, the spark, the will to keep going. You pause by the flower, its petals fragile but bright. Pandora's gone, but her story lingers, a reminder that mortals, like gods, can break the world and still find light. You see her in every human face, below their struggles, lit by Prometheus's fire, their dreams fed by her hope. You're hooked, but you're also ready for the next tale, curious about the next figure in this divine saga. For now, you linger the meadow's silence heavy, and let Pandora's story carry you forward. One last smirk. Pandora's jar is like a cosmic piñata, but instead of candy, it's all-you-can-eat misery with a side of hope. You're caught up in her world, its tragedy and tenacity, as gripping as Prometheus's fire. The meadow hums with her echo, but you're ready to move on, eager for the next chapter. You step away, the flower fading, and let the saga pull you forward. You've just left Pandora's haunting meadow, the faint glow of her buried hope still in your mind, as you're thrust into a rugged, monster-strewn wilderness where a towering figure wrestles a lion's roar. The air is thick with dust and courage, and you're standing beside Hercules, the mortal hero born of Zeus, tackling his epic 12 labors. You're here to cheer him through these grueling tasks, each one a test of strength and grit ordered by the gods. The lion's claws glint, and you're diving into Hercules' legend heart, racing ready to witness his unbreakable spirit. Hercules grips the Nemean lion, his muscles straining his face, set in a snarl that matches the beast's. He's Zeus's son, born to mortal Alcmena, and you see both god and man in him, divine power, human sweat. His labors are penance forced by Hera's wrath after Zeus's affair sparked her curse, driving Hercules to a crime he now atones for. You recall Hera's jealous reign, her vendettas against Zeus's lovers, and you're wincing for Hercules, caught in her divine grudge. The lion roars, and you're already rooting for him, a hero who's more ground than sky. You dodge the lion, fight the beast's hide impervious to arrows, but no match for Hercules' chokehold. He triumphs, skinning it to wear as a cloak, its jaws gaping over his shoulders. You're awestruck. This is the first of his 12 labors, set by King Eurystheus, a coward puppeted by Hera. The tasks are brutal, designed to break him, but you're seeing his resolve of fire that rivals Prometheus's stolen spark. You're following him now, to the next, the Hydra's swamp looming, and you're bracing for a monster mash that'll test more than his brawn. The Lernaean Hydra hisses, 9 heads, snapping its venom dripping into the mire. You're keeping your distance, the swamp stench choking the air as Hercules wades in his club swinging. Each head he cuts spawns 2, and you're shouting fire. Good thing his nephew Iolaus is there, cauterizing stumps with a torch. You're cheering as the final immortal head falls buried under a boulder. Hercules dips his arrows in its venom, a deadly upgrade, and you're impressed by his cunning echoing Athena's. Historians cite the Bibliotheca of Apollodorus, around 150 BCE, for these labors, a mainstream fact tying Hercules to heroic myth's core. But here's a quirky tidbit. Some ancient sources, like the poet Pindar, claim Hercules once got sidetracked mid-labor to join a drinking contest, downing a barrel of wine to impress a satyr. A hero with a keg stand side hustle. You smirk, picturing him belching through a myth. Scholars still argue whether these tales humanize Hercules or mock his brute image, questioning if he's a noble hero or a flawed man. You're leaning toward both, but his sweat-soaked focus keeps you hooked, believing he's got this. You're trekking with him to the Ceryneian Hind, a sacred deer of Artemis, and you're nervous recalling her wrath. You don't want her hounds on your trail. Hercules chases it for a year, gentle but relentless, finally catching it without harm. You see Artemis watching her bow, ready, but she nods, respecting his care, and you're relieved he dodged her anger. Next, the Erymanthian boar crashes through snow, and Hercules traps it in a drift, his laughter booming as he hauls it off. You're starting to love his grit, the way he turns impossible into done, even as Hera's schemes stack higher. Let's pause for a chuckle. Hercules' labors are like a divine to-do list from hell with Hera as the world's pushiest project manager. You're shifted to the Augean stables, filth piled for decades, and you're gagging as Hercules reroutes a river to blast it clean in one day. It's clever, not brute, and you're seeing his brain match his brawn like Athena's wisdom in mortal form. The Stymphalian birds are next their metal feathers, flying like knives, and you're ducking as he bangs Hephaestus's bronze rattle, scattering them for his arrows. You're high-fiving him in your head, amazed he's halfway through. You're on the Cretan bull, now a beast Poseidon sent to shore, and you recall his sea's rage. Hercules wrestles it to the ground, his grip like earthquakes, and you're cheering as he ships it off Crete. The mares of Diomedes, flesh-eating horses, are next, and you're wincing as he feeds their cruel owner to them, taming their hunger. You're chilled, but you get it. His labors aren't just tasks. They're survival, each one forging him sharper. You're starting to see the Greek view heroism's not glory. It's enduring what breaks others, and Hercules is its poster child. Here's another light jab. Hercules' life is like a divine CrossFit workout, but the coach is Hera, and she's got a vendetta. You're following him to the belt of Hippolyta, Amazon Queen, and you're tense, expecting a fight. He charms her instead. winning the belt with words. But Hera stirs a brawl, and you're dodging spears as he escapes. The cattle of Geryon, a three-bodied monster's herd, are next, and you're awed as Hercules slays the giant driving the cows across seas. You're exhausted just watching, but he's relentless, his lion cloak bloodied but unbowed. You're nearing the final labors, the apples of the Hesperides glowing in a sacred garden. Hercules tricks Atlas, another titan you recall from Prometheus's kin, into fetching them while he holds the sky. You're grinning at his sly move brains over brawn again. But Atlas hesitates, and you're nervous until Hercules outwits him, snagging the apples. The last labor-fetching Cerberus from Hades' underworld chills you. You remember that three-headed dog's snarl. Hercules descends, wrestles the beast, and drags it to daylight, his strength, defying death itself. You're speechless, his labors complete, and you're betting Hera's fuming. You're lingering by a mortal shrine to Hercules, its altar piled with laurels. Mortals tell his story, calling him Heracles in Greek, their voices thick with awe. They don't see a god's son. They see a man who conquered fate, and you're struck by his reach. You recall Pandora's jar, how hope clung amid evil, and Hercules feels like that hope, mortal, scarred yet standing. The Greeks told these stories to face life's grind, and you're feeling it. Heroism's not winning. It's fighting, and Hercules fought like hell. You're back with him now, watching him rest by a river, his lion cloak a battered trophy. He's not done more trials, a tragic end, and apotheosis await. But for now, he's human, his breath heavy with triumph and pain. You see Hera's shadow, Zeus's pride, and you're wondering if his labors were punishment or proof of his worth. You're starting to respect him, not for his strength, but for his heart beating through every impossible task. You're hooked, ready for the next tale, curious about the next figure in this divine saga. You pause by the shrine, a mortal child leaving a pebble for Hercules, his eyes wide with dreams of courage. You see his legacy temples, games, stories, and you're struck by its weight. Unlike Dionysus's fleeting ecstasy or Prometheus's eternal pain, Hercules' labors built a myth that mortals live by. You're ready to move on, but you linger the river's murmur soft and let Hercules' story carry you toward the next chapter. One last smirk. Hercules' labors are like a divine obstacle course, and he's the guy who'd high-five the monsters before beating them. You're caught up in his world, its grit and glory, as gripping as Pandora's tragedy. The wilderness hums with his echo, but you're eager for the next chapter. You step away, the lion's roar fading, and let the saga pull you forward. You've just left Hercules' rugged wilderness, the echo of his lion's roar fading as you're swept onto a storm-tossed sea salt spray, stinging your face. You're aboard a creaky ship, sails torn, with Odysseus, the cunning hero of Ithaca, navigating a maze of monsters and divine traps. You're here to sail with him on his long journey home from the Trojan War, dodging the god's wrath and his own hubris. The waves churn, and you're gripping the rail, ready to witness a mortal's grit against a world that wants to drown him. Odysseus stands at the helm, his eyes sharp, despite the bags beneath them scanning the horizon for land, or trouble, usually both. He's no Hercules, all muscle and divine blood. He's lean, scarred, with a mind sharper than Athena's spear. You're drawn to him, his mortal frailty laced with a stubborn will. The Trojan War's behind him, a decade of blood and cunning, but his journey home is worse, a 10-year odyssey, thanks to Poseidon's grudge and his own big mouth. You recall Poseidon's raging seas, and you're already nervous knowing Odysseus is on his hit list. You're rocking with the ship as Odysseus recounts his tale to his crew, his voice steady despite the gale. He blinded Poseidon's son, the Cyclops, Polyphemus, boasting his name afterward. Big mistake. Now Poseidon's waves hunt him, and you're feeling the god's wrath in every lurch. The crew's weary, their faces gaunt, but Odysseus's wit keeps them rowing. You're starting to see why the Greeks loved him. He's not a demigod, just a man outsmarting fate with brains and nerve. You're dodging spray, eager to see how he survives this mess. The first stop is the island of the Lotus Eaters, where honey-sweet flowers tempt the crew to forget home. You're tempted too, the scent's divine, but Odysseus drags his men back, tying them to the ship. You're impressed. His will's iron even against bliss. Next, the Cyclops' cave looms, and you're cringing as Polyphemus devours 2 men. Odysseus tricks him with wine, and a sharpened stake blinding him, and you're cheering as they escape under sheep bellies. But his taunt, Odysseus, did this, brings Poseidon's curse, and you're groaning, wishing he'd kept quiet. Historians cite Homer's Odyssey around the 8th century BCE for this epic, a mainstream fact, weaving Odysseus into the Greek heroic ideal, cunning over strength. But here's a quirky tidbit. Some ancient sources, like the poet Eugamon, claim Odysseus once wrestled a sea monster for a magic herb to calm storms. A hero moonlighting as a mermaid wrestler. You smirk, picturing him dripping seaweed and bravado. Scholars still argue whether Odysseus's tales glorify mortal resilience or warn against pride. Is he a hero or a fool? You're leaning toward both, but his steady grip on the helm keeps you hooked. You're sailing again, the ship groaning as winds from Aeolus's bag, another divine gift, nearly sink it, thanks to the crew's greed. You're dodging waves, frustrated with their stupidity, but Odysseus rallies them, his voice cutting through panic. The Laestrygonians' cannibal island is next, and you're sprinting as giants hurl boulders, smashing all but his ship. You're breathless, seeing his luck stretch thin, but his quick thinking saves them. You're starting to get the Greek view life's a gauntlet, and heroes aren't those who win, but those who keep sailing. Let's pause for a chuckle. Odysseus's journey is like a divine road trip, where every gas station's a monster den, and the GPS is Poseidon's grudge. The mood shifts as you reach Circe's island, where the witch goddess turns his men into pigs. You're wincing, but Odysseus, armed with Hermes' advice and a magic herb, outwits her, winning her aid. You recall Hermes' sly speed, and you're glad he's got Odysseus' back. Circe's bed is a trap, but he navigates it, gaining a year's rest and directions to the underworld. You're impressed, his charm's as deadly as his sword. You're descending to Hades' realm, now the Styx is chill, biting your bones. You recall its shadows, Cerberus' snarl, and you're nervous as Odysseus consults the prophet Tiresias, offering blood to summon shades. The prophet warns of trials, sun god's cattle suitors at home, and you're gutted, knowing his journey's far from over. He meets his mother's ghost, her words breaking him, and you're blinking back tears, seeing his mortal heart. You're starting to respect him, not for victories, but for enduring loss, like Demeter's grief, but without divine power. Here's another light jab. Odysseus's life is like a cosmic escape room, and he's solving it with a pocket knife and sheer stubbornness. You're back at sea, dodging the siren's song, their voices honeyed death. Odysseus, lashed to the mast, resists, and you're awed by his discipline, even as his crew rows ears plugged with wax. Scylla and Charybdis are next to a six-headed monster and a whirlpool, and you're ducking as Scylla snatches men Odysseus, powerless, but steering on. You're chilled seeing his limits, but his focus never wavers, and you're betting on him even against gods. You're on Thrinacia, now the sun, god Helios's island, where sacred cattle graze. Tiresias warned against eating them, but the crew, starving, disobeys. You're shouting no as they slaughter, and you feel Zeus's wrath brewing. Lightning splits the ship, and you're clinging to wreckage with Odysseus, the sole survivor. You're exhausted, his despair mirroring yours, but he clings to life, drifting to Calypso's island. The nymph holds him 7 years, offering immortality, and you're stunned when he refuses, yearning for home. You're seeing his soul love for Penelope, his wife, trumps divine bliss. You're nearing Ithaca's shore, the gods finally easing their grip. Athena disguised aids him, and you recall her wisdom, how she favors his cunning. You're sneaking with him into his palace, suitors feasting like parasites. Odysseus, cloaked as a beggar, plots, and you're tense, sensing blood. He strings his great bow a feat none can match, and you're cheering as arrows fly, clearing the hall. Penelope tests him, and you're holding your breath until she accepts him, their reunion raw and real. You're struck by their bond, a mortal love outshining Aphrodite's games. You're lingering by Ithaca's cliffs, Odysseus home, but scarred his eyes on the sea. Mortals tell his story, calling him wily, their fires lit with his legend. You see his reach unlike Hercules' labors. His journey's inward, a fight for identity against divine whims. You recall Pandora's hope, and Odysseus feels like its champion surviving evil with cunning and heart. The Greeks told these stories to face life's storms, and you're feeling it. Heroism's not power, it's persistence, and Odysseus is its king. You pause by his hearth, Penelope weaving beside him, their son Telemachus grown. You see hope in their quiet, a family rebuilt from chaos, and you're struck by its fragility. You recall Dionysus's wild ecstasy, Prometheus's bold fire, and Odysseus's journey feels like their mortal echo, a man who sailed through madness and won not by strength, but by wit. You're hooked, ready for the next tale, curious about the next figure in this divine saga. You step away, the seas whisper soft, and let Odysseus's story carry you forward. His ship's gone, but his spirit sails immortal light in a godly world. You're ready to move on, but you linger, the waves' rhythm steady, and let the next chapter pull you into its current. One last smirk. Odysseus's Odyssey is like a divine game of Survive the Gods group chat, and he's the guy who muted Poseidon. You're caught up in his world, its cunning and courage, as gripping as Hercules' labors. The sea hums with his echo, but you're eager for the next chapter. You drift from Ithaca, the stars fading, and let the saga pull you forward. You've just drifted from Odysseus's wave-battered Ithaca, the salt of his sea-soaked journey still clinging to you as you're hurled into a chaotic battlefield where bronze clashes and divine voices echo. The air is thick with dust and blood, and you're standing amid the Trojan War where gods pick sides like cosmic gamblers meddling in a mortal conflict that's tearing a city apart. You're here to witness their divine interference, dodging arrows and immortal egos as Troy's walls tremble. The roar of war surrounds you, and you're ready to navigate this epic clash, heart-pounding, wary of the gods' fickle hands. You're weaving through the fray, Greek and Trojan warriors locked in combat, their shields gleaming under a sun that feels too bright for slaughter. Above on Olympus, the gods watch their thrones, a gallery of divine drama. Aphrodite lounges backing the Trojans, her golden gaze on Paris, the prince who sparked this mess by stealing Helen Menelaus's wife. Athena and Hera, furious at Paris's slight in a beauty contest, champion the Greeks, their strategies sharp as spears. You recall Aphrodite's love games? Hera's jealous wrath, and you're seeing their powers collide here, mortals, as their pawns. Poseidon too stirs the seas against Troy, while Apollo's arrows guard its walls. You're dizzy tracking their allegiances, each god a player in this bloody chess game. You duck as Hector, Troy's hero, charges Achilles, the Greeks' deadliest warrior. Their duel is brutal, and you're catching divine fingerprints. Athena tricks Hector cloaked as his brother, leading him to Achilles' spear. You're wincing, recalling Athena's cunning birth, how she outsmarts even gods. Hector falls, and you feel Troy's hope crack, the gods meddling, tipping the scales. You're starting to see why this war lasted 10 years. Mortals fight, but immortals rig the outcome, their egos as deadly as bronze. Historians cite Homer's Iliad around the 8th century BCE for this war's myth, a mainstream fact, weaving divine and human into epic tragedy. But here's a quirky tidbit. Some ancient sources, like the poet Stesichorus, claim Helen never reached Troy. Her phantom, crafted by Hera, fueled the war, while the real Helen hid in Egypt. A ghost wife sparking a decade of death. You smirk, imagining the gods laughing at the mortals' folly. Scholars still argue whether the Trojan War reflects a real Bronze Age conflict, or pure myth, questioning if the gods' roles mirror Greek fears of fate's caprice. Are they puppet masters, or projections of human flaws? You're leaning toward both, but the blood-soaked ground keeps you focused, dodging divine whims. You're sprinting now, following Achilles, as he drags Hector's body behind his chariot, a brutal taunt to Troy. You're horrified, but you see Apollo shielding Hector's corpse from harm, a rare act of divine mercy. You recall Apollo's golden chariot, his protective light, and you're struck by his loyalty to Troy, balancing Athena's ruthlessness. Meanwhile, Aphrodite guards Paris, her golden boy, even as he cowers from Menelaus's rage. You're frustrated. Paris's love for Helen, fueled by Aphrodite's charm, doomed thousands. And you're betting Hera's smirking from Olympus, her grudge against Troy playing out. Let's pause for a chuckle. The Trojan War is like a divine reality show, where the gods vote off mortals with spears and storms. The mood shifts as you slip to Troy's walls, where King Priam begs Achilles for Hector's body. You're tearing up as Achilles relents, moved by mortal grief, and you're seeing a flicker of humanity amid divine games. Zeus watching enforces a truce, and you recall his thunderous rule, how even he bows to fate's weight here. The gods' meddling feels less like power, more like chaos, and you're wondering if they're as trapped as the mortals they toy with. You're back in the Greek camp, where Agamemnon, their leader, quarrels with Achilles over a captive girl, Briseis. You see Apollo's hand sending plague to punish Agamemnon's hubris, and you're dodging fevered soldiers, recalling his dual role as healer and destroyer. Hera and Athena nudge Achilles' pride, keeping him sulking in his tent, and you're frustrated without him. The Greeks falter, and the gods know it. You're starting to get the Greek view. War's a tangle of passion and pride, and divine meddling only knots it tighter. Here's another light jab. The gods treat Troy like a cosmic board game, and mortals are the pieces they keep knocking over. You're slipping to the Trojan side, where Aeneas, Aphrodite's son, fights. Despite wounds, his mother's glow, shielding him. You recall her seafoam birth, her power to sway hearts, and you're awed by her love for her son, even as she fuels the war's root. Poseidon oddly saves Aeneas from Achilles, hinting at a future beyond Troy. And you're curious, his sea's rage usually drowns, not spares. The gods' motives are a maze, and you're dodging their moves trying to keep up. You're nearing the war's turning point. The Trojan horse looming in your mind. Odysseus, you recall his cunning odyssey, crafts this wooden trap, and you're sneaking with the Greeks as they hide inside Athena's blessing, cloaking their plan. Troy falls for it, hauling the horse inside, and you're shouting silently, "Don't," as they celebrate. Night falls, and you're sprinting through Troy's streets as Greeks pour out fire spreading. You see Aphrodite whisk Paris away, but Helen's left to face Menelaus, who spares her love, or Aphrodite's charm wins. You're gutted as Troy burns the gods' game, ending in ash. You're lingering by Troy's ruins, the air heavy with smoke and wails. Aeneas escapes Poseidon's prophecy of a new city, Rome, maybe flickering in his wake. You see the gods' hands, their meddling, shaping not just war, but history, and you're struck by their reach. You recall Hercules' labors, his mortal grit, and the Trojan War feels like their shadow heroism crushed by divine caprice. The Greeks told these stories to face fate's cruelty, and you're feeling it. Mortals, fight love, die while gods spin the wheel. You're pausing by a fallen altar, once sacred to Apollo, now cracked and cold. Survivors weep, and you see their resilience a spark, like Pandora's hope, clinging amid ruin. You recall Odysseus' journey, how he sailed through divine wrath, and you're betting Aeneas carries that same grit. The gods are silent now their game played out, and you're wondering if they feel triumph or guilt. You're hooked ready for the next tale, curious about the next figure in this divine saga. You're stepping through the ashes, a child's cry piercing the quiet. You see Aphrodite's doves circle in Hera's peacocks gone, and you're struck by the cost. Divine meddling left a city in dust, yet mortals endure. You recall Dionysus's wild ecstasy, Prometheus's bold fire, and the Trojan War feels like their dark mirror, a clash where no one truly wins. You're ready to move on, but you linger the embers warm and let the war's echo carry you toward the next chapter. One last smirk. The Trojan War's like a divine family feud, but the gods brought spears instead of zingers, and Troy paid the price. You're caught up in its world, its tragedy and tenacity, as gripping as Odysseus' seas. The battlefield hums with their echo, but you're eager for the next chapter. You walk from the ruins, the stars dim, and let the saga pull you forward. You've just stumbled from Troy's smoldering ruins, the wails of its fall still ringing as you're drawn into a quiet, mist-shrouded grove, where a haunting melody weaves through the trees. The air is heavy with longing, and you're following Orpheus, the mortal musician whose voice could charm stones, as he descends to the underworld to save his lost love Eurydice. You're here to trace his tragic song, a journey of love and loss that defies death itself. The lyre's notes tremble, and you're stepping softly, heart aching, ready to witness a mortal's desperate gamble against the gods. Orpheus walks ahead, his lyre slung across his back, his face etched with grief. He's no warrior like Hercules, or cunning like Odysseus. He's a poet, his power in his music, and you're struck by his fragility, a man armed only with song. Eurydice, his bride, died from a viper's bite on their wedding day, and you feel the cruelty of it, a love snuffed out before it bloomed. You recall Hades' cold underworld, its Styx and Cerberus, and you're nervous Orpheus is heading there, hoping to sing Eurydice back to life. The grove fades, and you're descending a dark path, the air chilling as his music begins. His lyre hums notes like liquid starlight, and you're mesmerized, the rocks around you swaying to his tune. The path opens to the Styx, where Charon the ferryman glares, but rows him across, lulled by the song. You're hitching a ride recalling your last underworld trip, and you're awed. Orpheus's music tames even death's gatekeepers. Cerberus looms 3 heads snarling, but his growls soften to whimpers, and you're grinning, amazed a mortal's melody can hush Hades' hound. You're starting to see why the Greeks revered him. His art bends the world mortal, yet divine. You're slipping into Hades' palace, the onyx throne room, dim but alive with Orpheus's song. Hades sits stern with Persephone at his side, her eyes soft with memory. You recall Demeter's grief, how Persephone's pomegranate bound her here. Orpheus sings his voice, raw weaving Eurydice's laughter, their love into notes that crack the air. You're tearing up the melody piercing, and you see Persephone's hand tremble, Hades' face thaw. They agree Eurydice can leave, but Orpheus must not look back as they climb, trusting she follows. You're holding your breath, sensing a trap, but his song carries hope, and you're rooting for him. Historians cite Ovid's Metamorphoses around 8 CE for Orpheus's myth, a mainstream fact tying his music to love's defiance of death. But here's a quirky tidbit. Some ancient sources, like the poet Phanocles, claim Orpheus once charmed a forest. So well the trees danced to his wedding, only to mourn when Eurydice died. Trees as backup dancers. You smirk, picturing oaks doing a slow sway. Scholars still argue whether Orpheus's tale glorifies art's power or warns of human limits. Is he a hero or a dreamer doomed by doubt? You're leaning toward both, but his lyre's hum keeps you tethered, believing he'll win. You're climbing now, the underworld's chill fading, as Orpheus leads his steps, steady but tense. You're behind him, imagining Eurydice's shade, her footfalls silent. His lyre's quiet, he can't play and climb, but his humming carries the same magic, and you're caught in its spell, the path brightening with each note. You're nervous, recalling Hades' condition. Don't look back. You want to shout, trust her, but you're powerless, a shadow in his story. The light ahead grows the mortal world close, and you're praying he makes it love stronger than death. Let's pause for a chuckle. Orpheus's descent is like a divine open mic night, and he's got the underworld crowd eating from his hand. The mood shifts as doubt creeps in. You're almost there. The exit glowing, but Orpheus falters, his hum wavering. You're screaming silently as he turns just a glance, and you see Eurydice, pale, real-reaching before she vanishes, pulled back to Hades' realm. Orpheus's cry splits the air, and you're gutted his loss a knife. You're furious at him, at Hades, at fate, but you're also weeping, knowing love made him look, not weakness. You're back in the mortal world, Orpheus alone, his lyre clutched like a lifeline. He wanders singing of Eurydice, and you're trailing him the forests, bending to his grief. Animals gather stones, roll closer, and you're awed his pain fuels art that moves the earth. You see mortals listen, their faces wet, and you're struck by his reach. He's no king, no warrior, but his song shapes hearts. You recall the Trojan War, its divine meddling, and Orpheus feels like its opposite, a mortal who fought gods with love, not swords, even if he lost. Here's another light jab. Orpheus's love song is like a cosmic playlist on repeat, but the encore's just him crying. You're starting to understand his role in the Greek cosmos. He's art's sole proof that beauty can challenge fate, even if it falls short. You slip to a Thracian village, where Maenads, Dionysus's wild followers, eye Orpheus, jealous of his mourning. You recall Dionysus's chaotic revels, and you're tense, sensing danger. They attack, tearing him apart, and you're horrified his lyre's final note drowned by their screams. Yet his head cast into a river sings on, and you're chilled his art outliving his body. You're drifting now following that river, where Orpheus's shade reunites with Eurydice in the underworld's Elysian fields. You're bittersweet, their love eternal, but trapped in death. You see stars above, some say Orpheus's lyre among them, and you're clinging to that image, art immortal, even if mortals aren't. You're starting to get the Greek view. Love and art are defiant, but fleeting, and Orpheus embodies both his song, a light in life's shadow. You recall Pandora's hope, and his music feels like its echo, fragile but fierce. You're pausing by the riverbank, a mortal bard strumming a lyre, his tune, Orpheus's echo. Villagers listen, their fires warm, and you see his legacy. Poets, singers, lovers, all carrying his spark. You recall Hercules' labors, Odysseus' cunning, and Orpheus feels like their heart a hero, not of strength, but of soul fighting for love against God's rules. The Greeks told these stories to face loss's truth, and you're feeling it. Beauty hurts, but it's worth singing even if the gods silence you. You're lingering, the river's murmur soft as Orpheus's hum. Mortals don't pray to him, but they sing his songs, their voices weaving love and pain. You see Eurydice in their tales, her shade a symbol of what's lost, but never forgotten. You're hooked, ready for the next tale, curious about the next figure in this divine saga, but you're carrying Orpheus's melody, its ache a quiet companion. You're ready to move on, but you pause, the stars bright, and let his story carry you toward the next chapter. You step away, the lyre's echo fading, and let the saga pull you forward. Orpheus's song lingers, a mortal note in a godly world, and you're struck by its power art that outshines even Apollo's light. You're eager for the next chapter, but you hold the groves quiet. The rivers flow, and let the next tale draw you into its rhythm. One last smirk. Orpheus's song is like a divine mixtape that breaks your heart, then makes you hit replay. You're caught up in his world, its love and loss, as gripping as the Trojan War's chaos. The grove hums with his echo, but you're ready for the next chapter. You walk from the river, the mist clearing, and let the saga pull you forward. You've just drifted from Orpheus's misty grove, his lyre's mournful echo fading as you're thrust into a bustling mortal city, where the air hums with incense and the clatter of chisels on marble. You're standing before a half-built temple, its columns reaching for the sky, and you're surrounded by mortals toiling to honor their fickle gods. You're here to witness their worship struggles, the sweat and sacrifice they pour into appeasing deities who demand devotion but offer whims in return. The sun glints off altars, and you're ready to explore this dance of faith and fear, dodging divine tempers that could crush these fragile offerings. You weave through the crowd, priests chanting hymns, their voices strained with reverence. A farmer offers a lamb to Zeus, his hands calloused, praying for rain. Nearby, a woman burns laurel for Apollo, her eyes desperate for a sick child's cure. You're struck by their hope, but also their tension. Each prayer's a bargain, and the gods aren't known for fair deals. You recall Zeus's thunderous ego, Apollo's dual arrows of healing and plague, and you're starting to see why mortals build these temples, not just love, but survival, a shield against divine caprice. The temple's for Athena, her owl carved above the altar, and you're impressed by its grandeur, marble from Poros, gold from Thrace. Workers haul stones, their grunts echoing, while architects argue over sacred geometry. You recall Athena's skull-born wisdom, her patronage of cities, and you're seeing her influence here. This isn't just a shrine. It's a civic flex, a city staking its pride on her favor. Yet you overhear whispers last year's oracle misread a war lost, and now they fear Athena's scorn. You're starting to get the stakes worship's a tightrope, and mortals wobble with every step. You slip to a smaller shrine, this one for Demeter, its altar piled with wheat. You recall her grief, how her famine starved the earth for Persephone, and you're seeing farmers here, their offerings meager but earnest, begging her to keep the fields green. A priestess pours honey, her voice soft, but you catch her glance at the sky clouds gather, and you're nervous. They're Zeus's, not Demeter's. The Greeks know their gods feud, and mortals pay the price when Hera's wrath or Poseidon's waves clash with their prayers. You're dodging their fallout, feeling the mortals' fragile faith. Historians tie this worship to Greek festivals, like the Panathenaea, documented by Herodotus around 450 BCE, a mainstream fact, showcasing how cities honored gods with games and sacrifices. But here's a quirky tidbit. Some ancient sources, like the poet Callimachus, claim mortals once tried appeasing Poseidon with horse-shaped bread, hoping he'd calm seas for their ships. A divine pastry bribe. You smirk, picturing waves tossing dough back. Scholars still argue whether these rituals were heartfelt or desperate ploys, questioning if mortals worshipped out of awe or fear. You're leaning toward both, but the farmer's trembling hands keep you grounded. His lambs bleat a plea. You're moving through the city now, past a blacksmith's forge, where a man mutters to Hephaestus, his hammer sparking. You recall Hephaestus's fiery workshop, his scarred resilience, and you're struck by the smith's trust. No grand altar, just a nod to the god who gets his grind. Nearby, a merchant slips a coin to Hermes, praying for a sharp deal, and you smile, remembering Hermes's sly speed. These small acts feel truer than the temple's pomp, and you're starting to see the Greek view. Worship's not just sacrifice. It's a daily dance with gods who might ignore you. Let's pause for a chuckle. The Greeks' gods are like cosmic landlords demanding rent in goats and hymns, but the lease is always shaky. The mood shifts as you reach a cliffside shrine to Poseidon waves crashing below. Fishermen offer fish, their faces weathered, knowing one storm could end them. You recall Poseidon's raging seas, his grudge against Odysseus, and you're wincing. These men don't know his myths, but they feel his temper. A priest warns of a missed offering last year, a village drowned, and you're chilled seeing worship's cost. Blood, sweat, and no guarantees. You're back at Athena's temple, where a festival unfolds. Girls weave a robe for her statue. Athletes race in her name. You're caught in the energy, but you notice cracks. A priest skims offerings, a noble bribes for divine favor. You're frustrated, recalling Orpheus's pure song, how his love defied death. Here worship's tangled with politics, and you're betting Athena sees through it, her owl stare sharp. Yet the crowd chants their faith real, despite the flaws, and your torn humanity's messy. but its devotion shines even under divine scrutiny. Here's another light jab. Mortals' worship is like a divine Yelp review. 5 stars for Zeus, but the comments section's all, "Where's my rain?" You're slipping to a grove, sacred to Artemis, where girls dance their bows, raised praying for strength. You recall her wild hunt, her fierce independence, and you're awed these girls don't fear her. They emulate her, their steps bold. A mother offers a lock of hair for her daughter's safety, and you're touched, seeing worship as love, not just duty. Artemis's presence lingers a cool breeze, and you're glad she's watching, not hunting. You're nearing a darker shrine, this one to Hades, rare and shadowed. Mortals avoid it, but a widow kneels offering blood for her husband's peace. You recall Hades' grim throne, his quiet rule, and you're struck by her courage. Praying to death takes guts. She doesn't expect favors, just closure. And you're seeing worship's depth, not always for gain, sometimes for solace. You're starting to respect these mortals, their faith a spark, like Pandora's hope burning despite divine silence. The Greeks told these stories to face life's uncertainty, and you're feeling it devotion's a gamble, but they keep rolling the dice. You're back at the city's heart, where a poet sings of Troy's fall, blaming gods meddling. You recall the Trojan War, its divine chess game, and you're nodding. These mortals know their gods are flawed, yet they build altars. A child leaves a fig for Dionysus, giggling, and you recall his wild revels, how his wine frees and destroys. The boy's joy is pure, and you're clinging to it, a light amid the city's grind. You're wondering if the gods notice, if Zeus pauses his thunder, or Aphrodite her charms to hear these prayers. You're pausing by Athena's finished temple, its statue gleaming, mortals kneeling. The air's thick with incense, but you see their exhaustion. Temples don't build themselves, and faith doesn't come cheap. You recall Hercules' labors, his mortal grit, and these worshippers feel like his kin, enduring divine whims with sweat and song. You're struck by their resilience, a mortal thread weaving through godly chaos, and you're betting the gods depend on it, even if they'd never admit it. You're hooked, ready for the next tale, curious about the next chapter in this divine saga. You're lingering a priest's hymn, rising its notes like Orpheus's lyre, but earthbound human. You see the gods' shadows, Zeus's bolt, Hera's glare, Apollo's light, and you're struck by their hold, how mortals craft beauty to appease them. You recall Prometheus's fire, its gift to humanity, and worship feels like its echo, a mortal spark, defying divine indifference. You're ready to move on, but you pause the temple's glow warm and let the mortal's faith carry you toward the next chapter. One last smirk. Mortals' worship is like a divine crowdfunding campaign, all in for gods, who might not even show up. You're caught up in their world, its devotion and doubt, as gripping as Orpheus's song. The city hums with their echo, but you're eager for the next chapter. You step from the temple, the chants fading, and let the saga pull you forward. You've just stepped away from the incense-heavy bustle of mortal worship, the chants of Athena's temple still lingering as you're swept into a vibrant modern world, where the pulse of Greek myths beats beneath city lights and digital screens. The air hums with familiarity, and you're tracing the gods' modern echoes, their ancient stories woven into today's culture like threads in a tapestry. From movie screens to starlit skies, you're here to explore how Zeus, Athena, and their chaotic kin still shape human imagination. Neon flickers, and you're ready to dive into this living legacy, marveling at its staying power. You're standing in a bustling urban plaza, a massive billboard, flashing a movie poster for a blockbuster about Hercules. His lion skin cloak ripples in CGI glory, and you recall his grueling labors, how he wrestled monsters with mortal grit. The film's a hit, kids clutching action figures, and you're struck by his reach millennia later. Hercules is still a hero, his strength a symbol of human endurance. You see posters for other myths, Odysseus's cunning sea journey, Achilles' Trojan war rage, and you're grinning, recognizing the gods' fingerprints, Athena's wisdom, Poseidon's wrath, lurking in these tales. You slip into a nearby cafe where a poet recites verses about Aphrodite, her sea-foam birth reimagined as a modern love story. The crowd snaps, and you recall her dangerous charm, how she sparked Trojan chaos with a mortal's heart. Her name's everywhere, perfume, brands, dating apps, and you're seeing her power love's pull as potent, now as then. You overhear students debating Pandora's jar, blaming her curiosity, or Zeus's cruelty, and you recall her meadow, the evil she loosed hope's faint glow. The debate's alive, and you're amazed Greek myths aren't dusty. They're fuel for thought, sparking questions of fate and flaw. You're strolling now, passing a planetarium where constellations tell godly tales. Orion, a hunter favored by Artemis, glitters, and you recall her wild, moonlit hunt, her fierce independence. The stars bear Zeus's lovers like Callisto turned bear by Hera's wrath, and you wince remembering Hera's jealous reign. Mortals once prayed to these gods. Now they name stars and rockets after them. Apollo missions, Hermes satellites, and you're struck by the shift worship's gone. But reverence lingers, the gods' stories, a map for human dreams. Historians note this in texts like Bulfinch's Mythology. 1855, a mainstream fact tying ancient tales to modern culture. But here's a quirky tidbit. Some 19th century poets like Keats claimed muses still whispered Orpheus's songs, inspiring art in smoky London pubs. A divine open mic lingering you smirk, picturing Orpheus's lyre riffing in a dive bar. Scholars still argue whether myths endure as art or psychology. Jung saw gods as archetypes, Freud as desires, and you're leaning toward both. But the planetarium's glow keeps you grounded, seeing stories as humanity's mirror, reflecting fears and hopes. You're weaving through a comic shop, now shelves packed with graphic novels of Prometheus's fire theft, his chains a gritty sci-fi saga. You recall his cliff, the eagle's torment, and you're awed his rebellion inspires rebels from revolutionaries to hackers defying corporate gods. A kid grabs a Wonder Woman comic, Athena's wisdom in her lasso, and you smile, recalling her skull-born brilliance. The gods aren't gone. They're remixed, their traits, Zeus's power, Demeter's nurture, shaping heroes who fight modern monsters, from tyrants to climate chaos. Let's pause for a chuckle. The gods' myths are like divine Netflix, endlessly rebooted with new casts and CGI storms. The mood shifts as you hit a theater where a play reimagines the Trojan War as a corporate takeover. Aphrodite's charm, a PR campaign, Athena's strategy, a boardroom coup. You recall Troy's fall, the gods meddling, and you're nodding the play nails, their ego, how mortals paid for divine bets. The audience roars, and you're seeing myth's power. They're not just stories, but lenses showing human folly and resilience in new light. Here's another light jab. Greek myths are like cosmic memes. Zeus's thunderbolt, a viral gif that's been trending for centuries. You're slipping to a university lecture hall where a professor dissects Dionysus's revels as a metaphor for social unrest. You recall his wine-soaked chaos maenads tearing kings, and you're impressed. The god's ecstasy still sparks debate from festival raves to revolutions. Students scribble one doodling Hermes' winged sandals, and you recall his sly speed, how he'd love this academic hustle. Myths aren't dead. They're dissected alive in every argument. You're back on the street, a mural of Persephone, blooming with pomegranates. Her underworld split with Demeter, reimagined as climate cycles. You recall Demeter's famine, her mother's love, and you're touched. The mural's artist sees her in nature's pulse, a warning and hope for a warming world. Nearby, a band plays their song about Orpheus's tragic lyre, and you recall his underworld plea, Eurydice's fading shade. The crowd sways, and you're struck. Music still carries his grief. Love's loss as raw, now as then, connecting strangers under city lights. You're nearing a library, its shelves heavy with myth retellings, novels of Circe's island, Achilles' loves, Ariadne's thread through Dionysus's maze. You recall Odysseus's witch, Troy's hero, Dionysus's bride, and your awed mortals keep spinning these tales, each version a new lens on human struggle. A reader flips through a feminist take on Hera, her wrath recast as power, and you recall her peacock throne, her fight for respect. You're starting to get the modern view. Myths evolve their gods no longer feared, but understood their flaws our own. You're pausing by a park where kids play tag under a statue of Hercules, his labors carved in bronze. They don't know his lion or hydra, but they feel his strength shouting, "I'm a hero." You recall his mortal sweat, and you're smiling, his spirit's alive. A spark like Prometheus's fire-lighting dreams. You see Athena in a chess game nearby, her strategy in every move, and you're struck by the gods' reach, not as deities, but ideas shaping how mortals face life's monsters, from exams to heartbreak. You're lingering a street performer juggling his Peter, Hermes fast, his grin Aphrodite bright. The crowd tosses coins, and you see the gods echo trickery charm, human hustle. You recall the Trojan War's cost, Orpheus's loss, and you're starting to respect these mortals. They're myths, a guide through chaos like Odysseus's stars. The Greeks told stories to make sense of fate, and today's mortals do too. They're gods, not on Olympus, but in stories, screens, and skies. You're hooked, ready for the saga's end, but you're carrying their echoes, a chorus of ancient voices in a modern world. You're stepping through the plaza, a neon sign flashing Olympus gym, and you laugh, picturing Zeus spotting Hercules on a treadmill. You see the gods everywhere. Poseidon in ocean cleanups, Artemis in wildlife sanctuaries, and you're struck by their immortality, not as rulers, but as metaphors, human dreams cast in divine form. You recall Pandora's hope, and these echoes feel like its bloom, fragile but fierce, tying past to present. You're ready for the final chapter, but you pause, the city's pulse warm, and let the gods' modern song carry you forward. One last smirk. Greek myths are like divine Wi-Fi. Their signal weak in temples, but strong in human hearts. You're caught up in their world, its ancient spark, as gripping as mortal worship's grind. The city hums with their echo, but you're eager for the saga's close. You walk from the plaza, the stars above Orion bright, and let the final chapter pull you into its cosmic calm. You've just wandered from the neon-lit city, where Greek myths pulse in modern echoes, and now you're drifting into a vast, star-dusted void, the air soft and endless. The gods' voices, Zeus's thunder, Athena's wisdom, Orpheus's song fade to whispers as you're bidding farewell to their world, easing into a cosmic calm. You're here to fade into starlight, letting the Olympians' chaos dissolve into a gentle close, their stories settling like dust in a quiet universe. The stars hum, and you're ready to release this saga, heart full mind, slowing as the night cradles you. You're floating now, the earth a distant marble below its temples, and battlefields tiny specks. You see Olympus's golden peak, where Zeus once roared, now a faint glow. You recall his power grab, toppling Cronus with lightning, and you smile. He was a storm, but even storms pass. Hera's peacock feathers, Poseidon's crashing waves, Hades' shadowed throne. They swirl in your memory, each god a spark in this cosmic tapestry. You're letting them go, their dramas softening, and you're feeling lighter, the weight of their feuds lifting like mist. You drift past a constellation Orion's belt gleaming, and you think of Artemis, her moonlit hunt guiding his stars. Her bows long still, her hounds silent, but her wild spirit lingers a silver thread in the night. You recall Apollo's golden chariot, his lyre's hymns, and you hum a note, letting his light fade into the galaxy's glow. The twin sun and moon were balance, and you're finding that balance now, your thoughts slowing, the gods' fire cooling to embers. You're not mourning them. You're thanking them, their stories a map through human chaos. You're gliding deeper stars clustering like fireflies, and you see Athena's owl in their patterns, her wisdom etched in the sky. You recall her skull birth, her spear outsmarting Ares, and you're grateful she taught you cunning, the quiet strength of a plan. Ares' blood-soaked warpath, Aphrodite's heart-stirring charm, Hephaestus' fiery forge. They're all here, their passions a constellation of human dreams. You're whispering goodbye, their faces blurring, and you're at peace, the universe vast enough to hold their flaws and glories. The void softens a nebula's colors, blooming pink, blue, gold, and you think of Demeter's fields, her grief for Persephone painting seasons. You recall her famine, her love's fierce cost, and you're nodding. She showed you devotion's depth, how loss carves beauty. Dionysus's wine-soaked revels, Hermes' winged tricks, Prometheus's stolen fire, they dance in the nebula's glow, each a story of rebellion, joy, sacrifice. You're letting them fade, their echoes gentle, and you're feeling the saga's end, a quiet tide pulling you to rest. You're pausing now, a comet trailing silver, and you see Pandora's hope in its spark, fragile but fierce. You recall her jar, the evils loosed, and your smiling mortals endured their fires, lit by Prometheus, their hearts by her. Hercules' labors, Odysseus' cunning seas, Orpheus' tragic song, their comets. Two mortal lights in a godly sky. You're bidding them farewell, their struggles a lullaby, and you're sinking deeper. The stars hum, a soft blanket wrapping you in calm. Let's pause for a chuckle. The god saga is like a cosmic soap opera, all lightning and love triangles, but it's time to change the channel. You're drifting past Troy's ashes, its divine meddling a distant flare, and you recall Athena's tricks, Aphrodite's bets. The war's gone, its lessons etched in mortal grit, and you're letting it go, the clash of bronze silent. You're seeing worship's altars, mortals' prayers to fickle gods, and you're touched their faith like Pandora's hope burned through divine whims. You're whispering thanks, their story's a gift, now fading to starlight. Here's another light jab. The Olympians threw the wildest party, but even gods need a nap, and you're ready for one too. You're gliding through a galaxy's arm stars, like Apollo's lyre notes, and you recall Orpheus, his love defying Hades. His song's here, a cosmic hum, and you're humming along, letting his grief dissolve. You see mortal cities below their myths, alive in films, books, stars, and you're proud. Humans carry Zeus's thunder, Athena's wit in every story they tell. You're saying goodbye, their echoes soft, and you're sinking into the void's embrace. You're nearing the saga's close, a black hole's gentle pull ahead, its silence inviting. You recall Prometheus's cliff, his fire's cost, and you're grateful he lit the way for mortals for you. Pandora's meadow, Hercules' wilderness, Odysseus' seas. They're stars now, their light eternal but distant. You're letting them go, your heart full, your mind quiet. The gods' chaos, Hera's wrath, Poseidon's storms. Dionysus' madness was a mirror showing human love, loss, courage. You're at peace, their story's a lullaby rocking you to rest. You're pausing a single star pulsing nearby, and you see Persephone's pomegranate, her split life with Demeter and Hades. You recall their love its seasons, and you're smiling. Life's cycles are here in stars' birth and death. You're whispering farewell to the Olympians. Their thrones empty their powers. Myths. You're not sad. You're whole, their saga, a journey through human heart now complete. The star winks, and you're ready to fade the void's calm, a perfect end. You're sinking now, the universe vast and kind, its silence a mother's hush. You recall the myth's lessons, Zeus's power fades, Athena's wisdom endures, Orpheus's love sings on, and you're carrying them soft as dreams. The stars blur their light a gentle wave, and you're letting go your thoughts, drifting like leaves on a quiet stream. You're at rest, the gods' world, a memory, their chaos, a story told, now closed. You're fading the void's embrace warm, and you're ready to sleep the saga's end, a star-lit sigh. You're nestled in this cosmic hush, the stars' glow fading to a soft, velvet dark. The gods are gone, their thunder and lyre notes a distant dream, and you're safe, wrapped in the universe's quiet arms. You feel Zeus's storms settle, Hera's wrath cool, Orpheus's song hush to a whisper, and it's okay, your heart's full, your mind still ready to drift. The myths were wild, a whirlwind of love and loss, but here, in this starless calm, you're whole. No monsters to dodge, no gods to appease. You're breathing slower, the voids hum a lullaby rocking you gently as you sink deeper. Imagine a warm breeze carrying Demeter's wheat scent, or a faint echo of Hermes' laugh soft and far. You're not alone. The myths live in you. Their courage, their flaws, a quiet spark for tomorrow's dreams. Let your eyes close, your thoughts blur the universe holding you like a child. You're fading now, not into chaos, but peace. The stars' last light, a promise you'll wake. But for now, sleep. The saga's done its heroes and gods at rest, and so are you drifting in this endless, gentle night. Sweet dreams, traveler, until the morning calls.